Let's do this thing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to ATP Insights, where we cover the most important tech news in Asia. Today's Monday, the 24th of August, 2026. Let's get right to it. Okay, initially, sorry about that. We're going to do two news stories today. Southeast Asia joins the data center race, and Alibaba goes all in on AI. And then we're going to have, as always, an incredible lineup of guests, excuse me, on the show today. We're going to be joined by Ayaan Mohamud, Regional Vice President Marketing APJ at impact.com, to discuss how AI-powered partnership marketing can help impact customer acquisition and growth. And then later, we're going to be joined by Abhijeet Ramesh, Head of Innovation, Growth Products and Partnerships at Visa Asia Pacific, to talk about how trusted agentic commerce will change how businesses acquire and transact with customers. We're going to welcome James Loveridge, the Head of Projects and Development at Burnt Ends Hospitality Groups, to discuss how AI-enabled hospitality operations are helping F&B businesses. Next, we will talk to Beniamino Francesco Pellin, founder and CPO at Ship D2D, to cover how AI-powered logistics are making food and beverage brands better. And then Dr. Rustom Kanga, co-founder and CEO at iOmniscient and WildFaces Technology, will talk about how autonomous AI systems are changing the way businesses monitor, decide, and respond. And Parsa Aghdasi, the founder and CEO at ABR Labs, will talk to us about how governed agentic AI is changing the way regulated businesses make decisions and operate. And finally, Samuel Roach, co-founder at NinjaFi, will join us to talk about what NinjaFi is doing with artificial intelligence as well. And before we get to all of our guests and some news, let us hear from our presenting sponsor, Twilio. Twilio is the secure and scalable platform to build amazing customer engagement without the complexity, with the AI-driven workflows you need to connect. They are trusted by over 300,000 businesses. Frankly, it is the platform that makes more possible. Visit Twilio.com to start building today. Okay, let's get to some news. As I mentioned, the data center race is coming to Southeast Asia. This should not surprise anybody. Southeast Asia's AI build-out is becoming a physical infrastructure story. Compute capacity now depends on who can provide enough electricity as well. We always talk about this in the context, you can build a data center, and that's great. And frankly, in Southeast Asia, at least, like getting the land to do that and just getting the components to do it are still difficult, but not as difficult as they might be in some other places. But getting power, it just takes time, right? We always talked about this. It takes about 1.5 to 2 years simply to connect to the grid essentially everywhere in the world. And remember, that power has to be suitable, and the network connectivity has to work as well. And all of this stuff is necessary for this hyperscale style artificial intelligence. Let's talk, though, a little bit about the latest announcements in Singapore and Vietnam, because this is really going to point out like just how true this is. Okay, Singapore, and remember, we always talk about this in the context of like how many megawatts of power associated with these data centers is going to come online. Let's talk about this. Singapore has provisionally allocated another 200 megawatts of data center capacity under its second competitive allocation exercise. So what they do is they just put it up for bid. Who wants to create these data centers? Who wants to connect to the grid? Who wants to ensure that we have the AI infrastructure in Southeast Asia to be able to do that? This is the second time they've put this stuff up for bid. Digital Realty, Equinix, Keppel Data Centers, and ST Telemedia Global Data Centers will each receive 50 megawatts on Jurong Island. And again, think about this happening on an island, right? Singapore's so good at this. They're just so good at using their own resources to create the infrastructure that they need. If you went to Singapore 30 years ago and then you went there 10 years later, you would have seen a massive change in their infrastructure. Then if you went another 10 years later, another massive change in infrastructure. And now 10 years after that, you're going to see another huge change in infrastructure. To be fair, the first time I went on some of the islands in Singapore, there was nothing there. Nothing. Sentosa had nothing on it. The first time that I literally rode past it on a boat, it was empty, and they kind of bragged about its emptiness. Now there's a whole community there. And Singapore's been very, very good about building out this stuff. Now, as I said, this is the second time they've done this. This process drew more than 20 separate proposals. People in Southeast Asia, and frankly in Asia in general, are heavily committed to having and building out the right infrastructure for artificial intelligence in this region that this region can use, but also that the rest of the world can use. The four winners, as I mentioned already, right, have committed to source more than half of the new capacity from renewable or green energy, which is interesting that they've done that. And Singapore already has more than 1.4 gigawatts of data center capacity when they published that green data center roadmap in 2024. That was 2 years ago. But it's interesting to me that they're still focusing on this renewable and on the green energy. Singapore's like this, though. Like, once they commit to something, once they make up their mind that something is important, they don't take a short-term view on it. They don't even take a medium-term view on it, to be fair. They have a medium-term goal, but they definitely take a long-term view on this stuff for sure. Now, the other point that I want to make here is that Singapore is pretty good at developing its resources, but they abide by this policy of like everything in moderation, nothing in excess, right? So they're not going to build hundreds of thousands of gigawatts of data centers, but they're going to build what they believe is just the right amount. Again, like I said, to serve the capacity in the region, but also to serve the rest of the world. And to be fair, they paused new development for data centers in 2019 and have since moved towards selective capacity allocation tied to energy efficiency, which I think is super interesting, right? Its 2025 deal explicitly made economic contribution and sustainability part of the criteria. Singapore is effectively treating electricity available for data centers as a scarce strategic resource. Again, just coming back to this idea that the decisions that get made in Singapore appear to me to be very sort of apolitical. It doesn't mean that there are no politics involved in that sense, but it just means to me that they're not thinking about like what's going to be the short-term win for me or for this thing or for that thing. It's like, what is going to be the medium to long-term win for, for Singapore as a whole? And that ends up being super, super important. Now, here's another interesting part about this. Vietnam, again, which is a little bit later to this game, well, much later to this game, actually, frankly, than Singapore is moving in another way. And let's kind of let's go to that second. They are opening much more aggressively to international infrastructure capital. But again, why would they do this? Well, they're trying to catch up, right? They're trying to catch up. And frankly, we won't talk about this so much today, but we should also note that what's happening in Vietnam is also happening across the region and in Thailand in particular as well. Ho Chi Minh, so the city, HCMC, has granted Evolution DC a 50-year lease on almost 5 hectares in Saigon High-Tech Park for $508 million hyperscale facility with 52 megawatts of IT load. And this project, interestingly enough, is backed by a Singaporean consortium and plans to source more than 30% of its power from renewable power sources. So this is thematic actually in this region, is that the region itself in Southeast Asia trying to stay ahead in the artificial intelligence game to the extent that it can. It is building some of its own models. But again, if you listen to Martin and I talk about this on our sister show, a global tech podcast on AGTP, one of the things we constantly comment about is we're very strong believers that the winners of this on the model side, we don't know. You can guess just based on the resources that they've accumulated, but infrastructure is where this game is actually going to be won. And the fact that Singapore, Vietnam, Thailand, and the rest of this region have decided to compete on the infrastructure side, a place where they're very, very good at building sort of warehouse-size buildings, and where they can cut through some of the red tape to get some of the power online faster, to get some of the connectivity online faster, is definitely going to give them an edge as this stuff goes forward. And as I said, this project in Vietnam is actually quite meaningful. CBRE, so a big real estate company that operates a lot in this region, actually, estimated operational capacity at roughly 104 megawatts in late 2025 and expects a substantial expansion of the market. Development costs are estimated at roughly $7 million per megawatt, considerably below established regional hubs, although power availability and licensing remain constraints. This is what we talk about all the time, right? Power. This is the hardest thing to do. It's the hardest thing to build. It's not hard to build, but it's just hard to get permitted properly. And it just takes more time because power literally is the one thing that everybody else, wherever you're building this data center, is also going to need. And the power consumption for a typical data center, you can see just from the megawattage here, is going to be high, and it's going to sap power away if the power grid already exists in the places where these data centers are being built from existing people that are using it. The pattern here is actually, and I want to get to our next story in a second, but the pattern here in this region is actually pretty palpable. CBRE says that Johor, which is just north of Singapore in Malaysia, increased live capacity by 53% in 2025. And Malaysia has become one of APAC's major power advantaged markets, right? Some countries do have an advantage when it comes to the development and the provision of power. And as I mentioned before, Thailand is also attracting larger projects after improving access to electricity and introducing a direct power purchase program for large users. Now, I will tell you this, if you drive around Thailand, one of the things that is fascinating to me as you travel throughout the country is that Thailand is still building and still building a lot of things. Okay, before we move on to our next story, let's get to our second sponsor. Boomi is the data activation company for artificial intelligence. Boomi powers the agentic enterprise by bringing data to life across your business. Trusted by over 30,000 customers and supported by a network of 800 plus partners, Boomi helps organizations of all sizes achieve agility, efficiency, and innovation at scale. Okay, before we get to our guests, let's get to our second story really quickly. I want to talk about Alibaba itself, a name you've heard before, is going all in on artificial intelligence. Okay, let's talk about this. Alibaba, and this is news, I believe, from over the weekend, but Alibaba is preparing one of the clearest capital market statements yet about how seriously they're, like China's largest technology companies, are treating the AI infrastructure race. Okay, numbers. I love numbers. The numbers actually really matter to me. The company has proposed a $10.2 billion placement of new shares. Alibaba is a company that's been around literally forever. Okay, not literally, but for a very long time. Everybody's heard of Alibaba. Everybody's heard of all of their component companies, Alipay, Taobao, all these things that Alibaba does. They were pioneers in the e-commerce space in China, but they are saying they're issuing new shares, and Alibaba says 100% of the net proceeds will go to its full stack AI capabilities, with a particular emphasis on expanding, what's that word we like to use, Martin? AI infrastructure. The formal Hong Kong filing is important. As of August 23rd, it's a proposal subject to market conditions. But let me put it this way. If Alibaba wants to raise money, they're going to raise money. Reuters reported that Alibaba plans to issue 710 million shares at approximately $14 odd each. It's a slight discount to the previous closing price. Now, demand was strong enough for the deal to be enlarged after it became oversubscribed. Reuters also reported interest from sovereign wealth funds. If completed at this size, it would be the largest primary follow-on share offering ever by a Hong Kong-listed company and the third largest globally this year. It's hard to, what's the right word? It's hard to exaggerate the importance of what Alibaba is doing here. And the mere fact, frankly, that it is Alibaba, which is already a technological leader in China, which almost by definition makes it a technology leader in the entire region. Remember, Alibaba also owns Lazada, purchased them a bunch of years ago now, and has Alibaba Cloud, which is used throughout the region as well. When Alibaba sneezes, the rest of the region catches a cold. That's how important they are. Okay, and even more importantly, this primary placement, to me, is part of a much larger investment program and a much larger strategy by Alibaba. You know, when I said that they're going all in on AI, excuse me, you have to listen to the rest of this to really get a sense of just how much big this is. Let's go through it a little bit. In February 2025, Alibaba committed at least $53 billion over 3 years to AI and cloud infrastructure. And I continue to say this, and I will continue to say it as well. The numbers that we are discussing here get so large. I mean, I remember when a Series A, this is maybe a decade ago, a $10 million Series A, a $20 million Series A, Even $100 million for like follow-on financing was just considered to be gigantic. But now to me, when I talk about a $10 billion raise, I just think, is it big enough? Because the sheer scale of the investment in the infrastructure to run this artificial intelligence business that we're discussing right now, which I believe very strongly is just the largest structural and functional change in the way technology is impacting business and frankly our day-to-day lives in my entire existence. Okay, now let's get back to Alibaba. The company now says it has already spent close to half of that amount that they talked about in 2025. And they've also indicated that actual investment may eventually exceed the original commitment, which frankly should not be shocking. When you say, and again, I was just talking about these large numbers, right? The sheer amount of money that Anthropic, that OpenAI, that SpaceX are investing in their AI infrastructure is just intense and it's insane. And while costs remain functionally lower in Southeast Asia, well, I wouldn't call Hong Kong per se Southeast Asia since it's so closely associated with China. It's not that much lower. Costs are not that much lower, particularly in the because they have to buy the same components. Now building permits might be lower and power may be a little bit lower, but the rest of the cost infrastructure that goes into this is just much lower. But the point is that Alibaba spent roughly $10 billion on capital expenditure in the June quarter alone. Okay, but just think about it. And they've said that most of that is affiliated with their AI infrastructure. That's up 75% from a year earlier. I just want to do a little something. Just while I have everybody here, just so we can get a sense for this. Alibaba was founded in 1999. This company is almost a quarter of a century old, and it is investing like it's a startup. Like it's a very, very well-funded startup. Okay, and again, it's also creating huge amounts of revenue, right? As I've already said, it's one of the biggest and most impactful, and frankly, most powerful and most well-connected Chinese, and in this case, Asian technology companies. Free cash flow was negative by about $6.6 billion, but Alibaba still finished the quarter with approximately $70 billion of cash and liquid investments. So the equity raise is occurring alongside a substantially existing liquidity position. And again, this is super important. If you just think about how much liquidity a company like Alibaba has, in a way, the only real comparison is AWS, right? You cannot compare what Alibaba is doing to Anthropic, nor to OpenAI, because just the sheer amount of capital that they have and the sheer amount of capital that they generate just from their day-to-day business is just worlds different than what's happening at OpenAI, and frankly, than what's happening at SpaceX AI as well. This liquidity really, really matters. Now, as I said as well, the revenue that they're getting is not just from their core businesses either. And at some level, you could consider artificial intelligence becoming part of Alibaba's core business, but they're also getting some pretty substantial revenue into their AI infrastructure. Okay. Alibaba's AI cloud and compute services revenue increased 45% to US $7 billion in the past quarter, in the June quarter. AI-related product revenue has now grown at triple-digit rates for 12 consecutive quarters. I would joke that my math isn't that good, but it's pretty good. 12 consecutive quarters, almost 3 straight years. Okay, cloud-adjusted EBITDA rose 133% to $830 million. And the biggest point here is really, really straightforward for me. Alibaba is building an AI infrastructure business, not simply as a model development program, right? We talk about this all the time. It's the AI infra actually that's so important here. And the company is also investing in its own processors. It is building the compute capacity that these processors feed. Qwen then sits on top of that infrastructure as both a model family and an entry point to the Alibaba cloud. This is one of the things we've mentioned, right? Like you wonder why when OpenAI goes out and builds a new business, or when Anthropic goes out and builds a new business, they don't build a cloud business. This is something that SpaceX kind of got before anybody else understood. And that's why they went out and built their their gigantic data centers, right? That's why they went out and did that. And as you can tell, the name of those data centers for some reason is just escaping me. But it puts Alibaba on like a similar strategic path to the American hyperscalers, as I was just talking about. Although the absolute spending level remains different, Microsoft, Amazon, Alphabet, and Meta are expected to spend over $700 billion on capital expenditure just during 2026 alone. And much of that is connected to their AI infrastructure business. Alibaba's original 3-year commitment is around $56 billion at current reported levels. But the similarity is therefore in the architecture of the strategy and the willingness to commit large amounts of capital rather than in any kind of like dollar for dollar spending. Okay, Martin, let's bring in our first guest today, Ayaan Mohamud, the Regional VP Marketing APJ at Impact.com. Good afternoon. How are you doing today? You can hear me well? I can. At least I went to the afternoon thing. At least I got the timing right.
You did, yes. And you're still catching the light because it tends to get dark at about 5 p.m. So we're still looking okay with daylight.
It's so weird. Like I know Sydney's 4 hours ahead of Bangkok, but I feel like it's in the same time zone. I know that's really bad.
Yeah, no,
but it just
that's
kind of
totally fair. Yeah. I get that all the time. Working in a global company, everyone's always asking what time is it there? What's the weather like?
Yeah. So I'll commiserate with you just for a second before we get to the details here. But like I've been living in Asia for 30 something years, and my family still asks me like, "What time is it there?" Back in the United States, and I'm like, "Haven't you like? First of all, the internet exists. Like you don't have to ask. You can just check before we get on a call."
Yeah. Well, I just do the world clock. The people that I speak to the most, like my family, my friends, the offices, they're just on my world clock, and I just check what time is it there when I'm talking to you. Yeah.
Should be pretty easy to do. Okay, look, thanks again for joining us. We want to have you on to talk about how AI partnership marketing, can impact customer acquisition and profitable growth. Do you want to tell people a little bit maybe that may not be sure about Impact.com, and then we can jump into the details?
Yeah, of course. So Impact.com, we are a commerce partnership marketing platform. So we work with brands to allow them to partner with other brands, creators, publishers, or even their own customers on a performance basis to drive business outcomes. So that could be new customer acquisition, obviously sales, or anything, lead gen, whatever they're trying to achieve. We are the infrastructure globally that allows brands to do that.
Awesome. So tell me this, like partnership marketing seemed to be treated as like a channel. Do you know what I mean? But what changes when you think of it as like a core part of the customer acquisition strategy?
Yeah, and look, to be fair, we still hear that sometimes, in a lot of organizations, partnerships used to just be another performance marketing channel. But the most sophisticated brands that we're working with have recognized that it's actually core to how companies grow. And the reason that this is actually happening is the AI era is actually accelerating this even further. So when you think about like how people are finding products or service recommendations today, they're using AI as much as they're going to websites to discover products. They're also asking ChatGPT, they're going to Gemini, they're going to Claude, and they're actually looking for answers and recommendations. So those platforms are not going directly to a brand's website. They're actually going to trusted third-party sources, and they're pulling the recommendations, the trusted creator reviews, the affiliate partners, and they're looking at what they're talking about, what products they're recommending, what services they're recommending, and then they're using that trusted third-party content to create the answer. So partnership marketing is actually perfectly positioned in this new AI era that is moving from the traditional search era to the answer era. So brands are actually working with us to use their partnership strategy as their AI visibility strategy. So one great example is a fintech customer of ours called Pepperstone. So they actually challenged us to say that, their creator program, they want their creator program to be their AI visibility strategy program. And they kind of came to us and said, how can we set up our creator program to drive visibility and recommendations in the AI platform?
Do you think some of these companies and some of these brands feel, I'll call it like unshackled, in the sense that like now they can spend more of their real marketing program on not like bidding on ads and stuff for SEO, but really on creating a proper, influencer and partnership marketing program that actually has real, no pun intended, but has real impact. I can't believe I said that. But you know what I mean?
You set me up.
But you know what I mean though, right? In other words, companies used to have to, and still do at some level, spend so much money on like bidding for this word and bidding for that word. And if I search for something on some search engine, which always ends up being basically the same search engine, but now I switch that to, you know what, I'm just going to go to ChatGPT and ask it what the best thing is for this and try to source it. The outcome is completely different because, at least for now, people aren't paying for that. How does all this stuff change, and where does AI play a role here?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, and I think there's still an education piece here. I don't think we've solved it, and I don't think many brands have solved it either. And if I look back where we sat, I'm planning our big customer summit at the moment, and I'm putting together the programming. If I look at what the brands spoke about last year compared to what we're speaking about this year, it's completely different. And I think everyone has woken up to the fact that you can't just outbid your competitor anymore, right? So in search, obviously they favored the brands with the big budgets that could just put more money into Google and see the results. And we're not saying don't do that. I think we have to continue doing that. However, you're seeing more and more brands kind of take some of that budget and be like, well, how can I put more money into these trusted third-party channels? Because that is actually what the AI is referencing and citing. So I think the more research that comes out about how AI is making those decisions, I think is forcing, I guess, marketing leadership or the C-suite to look at this partnership channel in a slightly different way. And I think it's also exciting for challenger brands, because kind of having that community, those third-party referrals, that takes a long time. It's not a short-term strategy. So I think the brands that have actually been doing this for a long time and, you know, leveraging their customers, leveraging that third-party content, are actually benefiting a lot more in this new kind of AI answer era. So yeah, that is super interesting. And I think it's still in flux. Like, everyone is figuring it out, you know. I don't think anyone has it quite right yet, but at Impact.com, we're glad, you know, happy to be leading the charge with this, with some of our capabilities that we've built out. For example, we announced a partnership with Evertune, who are one of the leading AI visibility providers, to allow brands to be able to see in their category, you know, what third-party content are the LLMs referencing, and then have you got them in your partnership program? If not, partner with them straight away. If yes, continue investing in that top of funnel content as well. So,
and this is what I meant. This is what I meant when I said Unshackled. Like, at some level, if you're paying to be at the top of a search, and I know, as you said, like, we're still in sort of this hybrid, and I would call it less of a hybrid environment. Yeah, but we're still in this sort of hybrid environment where SEO still matters. People are still paying for that, and people should still pay for it for a while. But there are some of these AI companies that are saying, like, OpenAI is very clear that they're going to have an ad business. They said their ad business at some level, although I don't see it because I pay for OpenAI, but that their business is actually growing quite quickly. But businesses like Anthropic and up until now, like SpaceX.ai and some of the other large providers of artificial intelligence platforms are saying that they're not going to have advertising there. So people aren't going to be able to pay for placement. Over time, how do you think this changes the type of content actually that gets created and the strategies that these brands have? And I agree with you. It opens it up for challenger brands as well. But how do you think it changes the strategy over time? And where does the use of AI actually come into play as well, if that's fair to ask?
Yeah, so actually looking back at the study that we recently did in SEA, just to put some numbers behind it. So
I love it.
When we surveyed consumers, we're actually seeing that 1 in 4 SEA consumers are already using Gen AI to support product discovery. So I think what's interesting is AI has become, I guess, quickly a part of the discovery and maybe the consideration phase. However, there's not so many consumers that are using it for, I guess, purchasing. You know, it's still, people are enjoying going through that discovery shopping phase themselves. So they will use AI to synthesize and to, I guess, shortcut, so they don't have to scroll through pages of links. It's like, you've given me a short summarized answer, but then I'm still going to go to the brand. I'm still going to read reviews. I'm still going to watch TikTok videos or reels on Instagram to experience the restaurant, or to, you know, see what that outfit looks like, or see how that makeup is put on. So I think the type of content that will be created is going to be, on one hand, still, you know, you want to be authentic and connect with the consumer, but on the other hand, you're also thinking about how you're creating content that AI will be able to find, to cite. So I think especially in YouTube content, making sure that you're using keywords and making sure that you're using the right product description, so AI can kind of pull in those brand mentions. I think it's kind of shaping who you're creating content for. So yeah, on one hand, you're creating content for the consumer. On the other hand, you're creating content for the machine.
I'm so glad you said that, right? Because my next question, you saw me writing something down when you were talking about, like, what is the connectivity between the content that gets created now and the actual commerce, the actual execution of that last bit of commerce? And when do you think, and the answer may be, I don't know, but when do we think that agentic commerce actually starts to play a role here, where it goes directly from the content right agentically? Because I know, I see my friends shopping on TikTok, I see them shopping on Facebook, I see them shopping on Instagram, and it's slightly connected, but it's definitely not agentic. When do you think we move into a point where, like, the payment is agentic, the commerce is agentic, and the discovery is also being done using artificial intelligence, as you've just suggested?
Yeah. So I don't want to make any big, bold predictions, because we are not a research hub, but I feel like it's coming.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's more important to me, like, not when, right? I don't mean like it's going to be January 23rd. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care either, and you don't care. But
yes,
but the point is, like, is it a year? Is it 4 years? Like, you know what I mean? Just to get a sense of how far out in the distance this is. But stuff's moving so fast. I'm just curious, like, what you're seeing and what you're hearing, because one of the things you did say was, at your global event, we're not talking about the same things we were talking about last year. So that was kind of a segue into that too, is like, what are the things we're talking about? Because that's a hint into what's coming, at least. Yeah.
Yeah. So our research partner that we actually work with, Cube, did a little bit of, they did do some predictions, and we did ask some of the consumers that question as well. So I'm glad that you asked that. So from the estimates that we saw in the report, we're thinking probably 20% of SEA shoppers by the end of 2027 will make some kind of Gen AI native purchase. So we'll probably see a few people buying directly within the AI chats first. So, like the Shopify ChatGPT setup. But I think it will still take a little bit more time for, AI, like the AI, to actually go and auto purchase for you. We did ask if people would be comfortable with that. A lot of them kind of said no. They would only use AI. 42% said they still just want to use it as a secondary research tool to find ideas before actually then verifying and buying things themselves. However, some of them, there was some interesting data in the types of categories. So we did ask an open-ended question: if AI was to purchase something for you, what are the types of things that you're comfortable with? So not surprisingly, something like grocery was something that people would be comfortable. I guess similar to myself, you probably also have some subscriptions, whether that's a supplement or something where we kind of already are comfortable with. It's the same thing that I'm buying every month. I'm happy for the AI to do that myself. But
like, why do I care? I don't even want to think about it. Just have it show up at my house and just deduct it from my credit card. Like, I don't
exactly care. So I feel like for fully agentic commerce, there's a few categories where if it was to take off, it would take off first in those categories, and then other ones like financial services, or even travel. Like, I'm somebody that loves traveling. I do a lot of research, and that is part of the joy for me. So I wouldn't want to completely outsource that. I want to use it to give me, okay, what are the top 10 things to do here, or outfits to wear on safari, but then I still want to kind of go through that shopping journey myself. And I think the biggest thing that we saw in the research was, trust, like consumers trusting AI versus trusting real people, real reviews, real experts talking about content or comparison of products. So I think that trust piece is still something that
how do we do that? Because that was actually going to be the next thing I was going to ask you. I think we've reached the point, and again, tell me where I'm wrong here, but I think we've all reached a point where we read a review on, pickyourtravelsite.com. It doesn't matter to me. And you're just like, did that guy really stay there with his wife? Like, does it really make sense? Do you know what I mean? Is that photo untouched? Like, all these things that we don't trust. How does the switch out of that? Because I do agree with you. Like, even today, I don't go directly to those sites without mentioning who they are. I ask, Don't laugh at me like that. This is hard work over here. I'm trying not to say anything bad. But you understand the point, right? Like I'll ask ChatGPT something about travel, and then at some point, I'm going to have to go to book somewhere else. But the point is that, like, how do you get the trust there from the beginning? Because I think a lot of the trust has been lost in that SEO world, where people are like seriously, if I put, and I've been saying this for 2 decades now, but if I put something into a search engine and I get somebody else's business, do you know what I mean? Like I'm searching for X and I put in the name of that company and I get somebody that bid higher than they did on that term, I get mad. Do you know what I mean? Like if I search for Coca-Cola and I get Pepsi, that's a bad thing. How does this change what's happening in the travel space or any other space when you're using artificial intelligence to do this, as opposed to using search to do it?
Yeah, so I think it's similar to what I said at the beginning. It's not really anymore about what the brand says about itself. It is kind of what everyone else says about you. So that's much harder to manufacture. You can't, I'm a marketer myself. We have campaigns and brand messages, and on point we want it to look like this, we want it to sound like this. But fundamentally, a brand is what your customer experiences, what your customer thinks you are, and what they tell other people that you are. And that is actually what we're seeing in this new AI-driven commerce world. Is you can't really buy your way in as much as you could in the past, because the way that it is sourcing its citations and its answers is from hundreds and thousands of third-party referrals, recommendations, reviews, and content about what other people are saying about you. And I think brands are noticing that they have to give up that little bit of control and kind of hand over those reins to some of these creators and trusted partners who can tell their story in a different way and in a way that connects to their niche community, their engaged community. Because I think the more that we're connected to AI, the more that we actually want to connect back to humans.
So I could not, and I actually heard people talking about this today, and I could not agree with you more on this. Again, it seems like an aside, but I just want to give a little bit of insight into the way I think about this too. People ask me all the time, they're like, you can create a podcast just using artificial intelligence, right? Like I could just take Ayaan Mohamud's, like all the stuff you've already said, and I can take all the things that I've already said. I can synthesize your voice and synthesize my voice as well. And like, we're off to the races. And I'm like, yeah, but then I don't know what mood she was in on Monday. Do you know what I mean? I don't know, like, if her daughter, and I'm just making stuff up, I don't know enough, but you understand, like if your daughter just like graduated from 3rd grade, like, I don't know how happy you are about something, and that's hard to fake. And I think what's happening, and I think this is a good thing for sure, is that humans, for lack of a better term, they want to go outside and touch grass, right? And I think it feeds into the marketing stuff as well, because they want to feel like that when they're getting marketed to for anything, that there's some grass touching there as well. And I think part of that is trying to feel like, does this resonate me? And do I feel a connection to it in a way that's ultimately and uniquely human as opposed to generative? Does that make sense as well?
Oh, 100%. And funny enough, that is actually a topic that I'm working on for this closing keynote of the Customer Summit, because, we are a technology business. We talk about AI all day, every day, whether we use it personally, professionally, or our platform, and how, the AI features and functionality is working there. But fundamentally, we are in a human, we are still in a business that is led by humans. You still want to do business with humans. You want to look each other in the eye. I want to go and have a coffee with you. I want to go to a physical event and go meet other people that are doing the jobs that I do. And so what we're trying to do is like, what are those skill sets that remain uniquely human? And that is things like critical thinking and judgment. Like at the end of the day, I can get AI to give me a whole range of answers, but I still have to have the judgment and the experience to decipher which is kind of the right answer or the right recommendation or the right tone. And I think those are the things that can't be replaced. And I think as a marketer, those are also the things that you need to, upskill yourself or lean more into, because those are the things that are going to separate, people that are doing well today to how you're going to get to your next gig. So it's like, yes, okay, we're all going to at some point have one form of AI literacy, but then how are you getting the AI to work for you?
Exactly.
And how can you still communicate with each other and connect to that human on the other side? So even though I work for a B2B company, we're still marketing to humans. I'm not marketing to another company. I'm marketing to the humans within that company.
Yeah, and it's weird because once you forget that, and I don't mean you, but like once one forgets that, I think one loses the plot, at least in my mind. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I still want to go and touch grass all the time. I need to connect. And so I think that the challenge that brands have, or companies even like Impact, is, so how do you bring the online offline? And I think events marketing is having a bit of a resurgence. I feel like a few months ago everyone was talking about, was it the Anthropic job? A field marketer was getting paid $400K, and it's like, because people want to hang out with each other and learn from each other and actually disconnect. Or else I could just sit here, be plugged into YouTube and just watch training videos all day of how to be the best at my job. But I also just want to learn from other people. And so,
Exactly. Okay. Look, I can't believe that's the fastest 20 minutes of my life. I really
we could go on.
It was good. We could go on. You should come back for sure. Thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. It was great to meet you. It was great to have you back. I mean, it's great to have you here, and you should definitely come back.
My pleasure. It was wonderful to meet you. And
thank you.
Thank you.
You very much. Okay, Martin, let's do HCL. HCL Tech is supercharging progress with AI that moves beyond ambition and delivers real business impact. A recognized AI leader trusted by global enterprises to turn technology into real transformation. HCL Tech, supercharging progress. Martin, let's bring in Abhijeet Ramesh now as well. Hey man, how are you? I love your background, by the way. It's beautiful.
It's very tech, yeah.
Yeah, it's very like kaleidoscopic, if that makes sense. Is that a word? Or did I just make that up? I don't know. Anyway, it's great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us today. We wanted to talk to you about how trusted agentic commerce can change how businesses acquire and transact with customers. Normally in this spot of the podcast, I would ask you to tell us a little bit about Visa, but if you're watching this show and you don't know, it's on you. Okay, let's just jump right into this.
Yeah.
Why is agentic commerce emerging as one of the most significant shifts in digital commerce today?
I think it started with people using AI assistants to do what they did on search engines in the past, like look for whatever they wanted to buy, look for the best deals. The shift really is when they go from looking for things, for going from discovery to actually completing that purchase and everything that happens after. And that shift is important at many levels. So it's important because it's fundamentally changing consumer behavior. It's fundamentally changing where consumers go to shop. AI and AI-led services are becoming the front door for commerce. It also fundamentally changes how things need to work in the ecosystem between the different parties involved. And lastly, I think, and most importantly, it is going to drive new models of both trust and from a commercial perspective, just how shopping and commerce happen. So it's going to give rise to a sort of a new world, a little bit like when marketplaces emerged. It changed how consumers shopped. It changed how merchants work with platforms. It changed commercial dynamics. So this is sort of the next shift in all of those regards as well.
So how do you think it's going to change consumer behavior? There's a lot of stuff to touch on, if you don't mind, to dig a little bit deeper there. Like, I have my own ideas, but you're in it every day.
Yeah.
How do you think it's going to change consumer behavior? And what do you think the impact is on the growth of commerce as well?
Yeah, I think the first thing, like we said, right, is where people shop will change. Where you go to look for what you want to buy will change. It'll move from a few different places. It'll move from going to a search engine, or it'll move from going to a marketplace platform, or going to the retailer's own platform, to an AI surface. So that's the first big shift. I think the other things that will change along with it are how do you take care of the foundational stuff that is needed for shopping or commerce to happen. And let's talk about that on on both sides of it,
Please.
the consumer side and the seller, the merchant side. So on the consumer side, things need to change, but the foundational stuff remains the same. In that, you need to think about things like identity and authentication. How do you make sure that it's me who is authorizing my agent to go and buy something for me? And the second foundational thing we believe is intent and control. Like a user always must be in control what happens, even if they even if they delegate a task to an agent, or in the near future maybe let an agent act autonomously on their behalf. The user needs to stay in control. And then last is, you need to protect consumer interest. You need to think about what happens if something goes wrong. So all of those things need to evolve, sort of in this brave new world of AI and agentic commerce. Um, and then on the seller side, merchants need to think about who can come and shop on their platform. They may want some agents to come and shop on their platform. They may not want others for many reasons. There are the basics of fraud and risk, etc. But there are bigger commercial questions there, like who do they want to expose certain inventory to versus bring certain inventory directly to their consumers. What are the price points they want to sell directly at versus through an agent? It's almost like channel strategy for them.
Yeah.
So all of those things need to start changing on the merchant side as well. And I think the last most important thing in all of this is like a fully functional ecosystem needs to come together. And that happens when you can create a trust model between everyone. And that's sort of also where we see our biggest role, right? From taking a consumer, giving them the right kind of controls, making sure it's actually them shopping, and then making sure that a merchant can trust an agent, and then making sure when a purchase is made and completed, even if something goes wrong, the right kind of sort of dispute frameworks and protections in place. And I think that sort of is the most important foundational layer, like creating trust between all of the parties involved, so that this whole thing can work. And that's when it'll take off and scale.
How do you? So I think consumers are going to get used to this a lot faster than merchants are. You tell me again if you think I'm wrong here, right? Because it's like whether I go shop or whether I tell my agent to go shop for me, in a way, I feel like it's me going to be treating my agent, and I haven't done this yet, but this is the way I think about it. Like a junior intern or a junior employee of my company. I'm like, here's $100. It's all you get. Just go get lunch for the four of us. That's $25 per. Get yourself lunch too. Sorry, it's $20 per. Do you know what I mean? Like I can give real guardrails, real things, and don't do anything else outside of those things.
Yeah,
that's really straightforward.
Yeah.
But it's just like, who is doing the transaction that changes for me? And there's some level of autonomy, but you and I can argue over coffee over whether like even our human employees have 100% autonomy. I would argue that that's not the case.
Yeah.
But that at some point agents will have the same level of autonomy as humans once we trust them better. But how do you think the merchants are going to react? Because they've built their entire businesses around, a platform, whether it's a platform in the US or it's a platform in Southeast Asia, right? And again, it doesn't matter if it's Shopee, if it's Facebook, if it's TikTok, if it's Instagram, if it's Lazada. They've built their entire businesses around this infrastructure and a decision-making process that reflects that. But now as those channels change, how are the merchants going to react to, like, now I need to rethink my whole business model because the way people discover me could be completely different. And then the way they interact with me, the way they pay me. And you're right. Like, I hadn't considered this thing you were talking about before of like, who do I give access to my shop? I shouldn't say this, but this is actually true. I went to buy, this is years ago, my wife at the time, some earrings at Harry Winston. Yeah, it's a little bit of a brag. But the point is they don't let anybody in.
Yeah.
They just don't. And there's a reason why. They're like, there's no, and they make mistakes too, because you could show up in shorts and a t-shirt and still have $12 billion. They don't know, but they're making a value judgment. But how can you just start with that? How do you decide like who to let shop there? Because agentic can change that too. Who can pay for things, because that's agentic as well. But then how do the merchants change their business? I know it's a big thing, but like you're seeing all this stuff. How does that look to you?
Yeah. Maybe let's just test the consumer side hypothesis for a second, and then we'll come to the merchant side.
Yep.
So yes, you're right. The merchant side adoption will be much, much faster. But it'll still be sort of in phases. In the earliest phases, we believe that consumers won't just let go all control. They will want to be involved in certain stages, certain steps of that commerce journey. We also believe that there are certain segments or verticals where consumers will not want to let an agent shop on their behalf. Like fashion and apparel is an example. Like, you just need things to be a particular way when you're buying something to wear. So firstly, it's a while before consumers fully trust agents, and until then, this notion of human in the loop will persist. You will need to biometrically authenticate a purchase just at the point of the decision making. Maybe over time hopefully it will become fully autonomous for the sort of the lower order decision making that you can delegate to an agent. So this is the consumer side.
Can I just say for people, sorry, and don't lose your train of thought, but can I say, now we do that today anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like when I walk into a store with a credit card, or when I pay with a credit card, whether it's a one-time password or all these things, we've decided that there's a way to figure out the authenticity of the person making that purchase, either in person or electronically. So it's not that different, but the methodology is different. Sorry, just
but equally, you just put your card into Netflix and let that payment happen month after month.
Yeah,
because it's lower order, it's safer. You don't want to be bothered by it. No. So there are categories where you will let AI take over, and others where you'll want to be involved more, depending on a variety of factors.
Right.
So that's the consumer side of things. But if you think about the seller or the merchant side of things, that's we need to go a little bit broad and deep, I guess. So you need to start thinking about, firstly, how ready are merchants, because and I spend a lot of time talking to merchants. That's what we're doing right now. We're getting the ecosystem ready, and it's a spectrum from, we just don't know this thing and we don't understand this thing, so we're just going to block all bot activity.
Right.
On the one end of the spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, there are some pretty large players globally and in our region here who are like very open arms, getting ready for agentic commerce, putting out AI assistants for shopping, making their inventory available to the big AI assistants. So it's a spectrum, but within that spectrum actually is a series of decisions that a merchant or a seller needs to make. There is, if you are positively disposed towards agentic commerce, you need to think about how do you make yourself more discoverable. This whole notion of AEO that has come up and has evolved from the SEO that we knew in the past. So starting from there, then you need to think about your question, like, how do I decide which agent to let in? And to maybe give you an example of what we are doing in this space, we put out this protocol called the Trusted Agent Protocol, which is essentially a protocol, but more importantly, is a directory, of agent and merchant directory, where we run a pretty high bar for which agent can shop using Visa cards. So if it's an agent we trust, a merchant can rely on that and look up our directory and say, hey, this is an agent Visa trust, so I'm just going to let that agent in. Likewise, agents, if they need to look for merchants which are ready for agentic commerce, they can go to the same directory and look for which merchants they can shop at. So that is an example of how an agent can decide who they let in based on some trusted central party, which in the example I gave you is Visa. And once they've made that decision around who they let in, merchants need to think about, this starts becoming their channel strategy. Like, what is the kind of inventory they want to make available to an agent versus what they want to sell directly. Right. It also becomes channel strategy from a consumer loyalty and stickiness perspective. Like, do they want to tell an agent, hey, this is a customer that comes to me regularly, has an account with me, I would like to cross sell and upsell to this customer, or do they want to remain fully in control of that and do that on their own? And then lastly, they need to think about what happens after the purchase is done. Like, how are they really going to service that sale? And between the agent and themselves, who's the customer going to go to if something goes wrong? Like, how do they manage everything that happens after the purchase? So it's a series of decisions. It's far more involved on the merchant side, especially compared to the consumer side, which is why we believe that the merchant side is going to move slower and will take a little bit longer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was part of the genesis of my question, is that the number of moving pieces that change for a merchant are just so much larger or so much more voluminous than they would be for a purchaser. But here's the other question. You brought up something interesting. You made me think about this. And again, you may say, like, I don't know, and that's fine. But again, you're in it every day, so I'm just curious what you think. Do you think people are going to be creating these long existing sort of trusted agents? Do you know what I mean? Where like they hire an agent or they have an agent and they're just like, this is the one I'm going to use for shopping from now until eternity. And that's the first thing. Or do you think they'll spin up an agent to do some shopping and then just shut it down and have a new agent that comes and does some shopping for them? And I guess the second part of this is, are you seeing providers pop up where they're like, don't worry about it. If you want an agent for shopping, we'll create that agent for you. Right. So let's just say, company XYZ is like the agentic shopping agent creator company. Yep. And that by definition, because your agent is sort of from that service, that now it's trusted. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think the answer to your first question, it's going to be a little bit like when apps started to show up, and we were saying there's an app for everything.
Yep.
And then you could choose to go to that one app for everything, or you could choose to use different apps to book your cab, for your banking, for your shopping. So it's going to be a little bit user dependent, but the options will be many. Like, we are seeing the full spectrum of AI assistants becoming agents, to agents appearing in chat platforms and texting and messaging platforms, to very verticalized agents for things like travel, to what we are calling CLI agents, where in a CLI environment you can create an agent to go and do a series of tasks for you, and which could very well be shopping. So it's going to be a spectrum, and there's going to be a lot of enabling infrastructure and platforms to do that. To your second question around, will there be platforms that will just build agents for you to use?
Yeah.
I was just talking to the team, and the name is not coming to me quickly, but there's a marketplace of agents out there now. If you want to get something done, a little bit like TaskRabbit.
Yeah,
but,
that's exactly what I was thinking. Like, sorry, go ahead.
So there is such a thing out there already. Like, it could be for a small task, or it could be something for something more sophisticated. But there are people building like a bunch of different kinds of agents, and if you need something done, you could use one of those agents. I'm sure there'll be like ratings and other ways of validating how good an agent is. Or if you want something custom built, I'm sure there'll be people. And like, just the cost of the tech involved to build this stuff has just gone down so much, right, that the possibilities are sort of infinite.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think about this, but like, if I think about all of this sort of transactional and shopping data, right? Because no one uses a credit card for anything except for buying stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, almost by definition. And whether it's shopping like for a Christmas present or shopping for a widget that like you need to put into something that you're manufacturing, it's still shopping per se.
Yeah.
Can we imagine a world where it's like agentic shopping powered by Visa? Do you know what I mean? Where like almost by definition it's trusted, because the same people that are paying and managing the payment infrastructure are also managing the shopping infrastructure. And because of this, the necessity to sort of minimize fraud, understand intent, understand what's the right word, consent as well. Like all those things are already being used by Visa per se. And now you just transfer all of that trust into the agentic shopping part of it. That seems like a natural thing for me. Is that something that we can think about?
Yes, absolutely. So we can talk about the data in a bit, but like from a pure transacting from using your Visa card perspective, all of the things that we talked about earlier, identity and authentication controls, capturing an intent, enforcing it, to having the kind of frameworks you need for dispute management, all of that is in place. We just needed to adapt it for this new sort of context. It's in place. It's that's what sort of powers our Visa Intelligent Commerce suite of solutions. And for us, we've been doing it forever. So it's we can safely say that we've got that bit covered. the data bit is interesting. So we in a couple of months, like June, July, we announced our own LTM large transaction model where Visa sees billions and billions of transactions, and then we sort of built a model that is trained on these transactions. And the applications are so many. We go from using it for fraud and risk. So when an agent is shopping on your behalf, we know what you usually do, and therefore if an agent does anything out of the ordinary, we can tell your issuing bank, and they can do something about it. And then also, with the right kind of consents in place, we can tell your agent, especially if you're going to use different agents for different things, we can tell your agent within that minimal context window, what you like and don't like. Like, where do you typically like to stay when you're traveling to, for example, New York?
Yeah.
We know where you've been spending, so we do have the ability to help agents make sharper decisions, leveraging the data we see, and we're able to do that with the right level of consent frameworks in place.
So interesting to me. Can I ask you this too? When a transaction potentially, right, gets initiated from an inferred goal, like it's not a specific thing, rather than an explicit consumer action, what does sort of define what that consent means, if that makes sense?
I think I need to make the distinction between consent and intent a little bit. Like,
Please.
Consent needs to be explicit. Like, we are very clear about that. Consent needs to be explicit, needs to be codified, all of that. A user needs to be clear about what the data is going to be used for, especially.
Right. Yeah.
Intent, you're right. It can be very clear, very codified, or it can be derived and implicit. And that's where we believe that we can build network level controls. So we can, say if someone wants to buy a pair of sneakers for not more than $300, like we can make sure that like a $310 transaction doesn't go through. But there are, but like if you want a pair of white sneakers and you get a pair of blue sneakers, it's like that's not the kind of thing we can systemically, put controls around. But
Yep.
that's where our dispute frameworks come into play. That's where you have to think about what recourse does a user have if they didn't get what they wanted to buy, and then
Yeah.
where does the responsibility lie? Like, where did things go wrong? And again, the frameworks have been there forever. We just need to evolve them appropriately. More importantly, in agentic commerce, there is a lot more visibility and traceability as to what happened. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
you can actually capture what the prompts were, and then use that to finally decide what went wrong where. So, and between that and AI becoming so good, you can manage this whole dispute process potentially completely using AI and like automate the whole thing. So to your point, yes, some of it will be implicit, and some of it will some intent will be explicitly captured, and some will be implicit. But again, we feel confident that we can put frameworks around it, if not system-based controls, to manage it in the way we've managed all of the commerce we see around the world so far.
Got it. I can imagine there's never been an more exciting time to be you and to do your job. One more thing, and then I let you go. Just because stuff is changing so fast, it's so interesting. Who owns the customer relationship, do you think, and why does it matter if an agent becomes the interface between a consumer and a merchant?
Yeah, I think I think that that's a little bit like when. Again, going back to the marketplace example or the
Yep.
super apps example, I think it comes down to the specific service. So, as far as your banking relationship is concerned, like everything related to your card, your relationship is with your bank that gave you the card, or other financial institution that gave you the card.
Yep.
But if it's your engagement when it comes to shopping, like, you gave a specific instruction to an agent to do something on your behalf, that's between you and the agent. And then there are other sort of relationships beyond that. Like, if the agent is paying your, sort of electricity bill on your behalf, then that service relationship is with, with the electricity, provider. which is why, going back to what I said earlier, trust framework is very important. Like
Yeah.
all of these different people involved need to play by the same rules, need to be able to, in our world, what we call interoperate. Otherwise, and work with some level of standards and sort of common principles. Otherwise, the thing doesn't work. It doesn't scale.
Got it. Okay, Abhijeet, look, we've already gone over time. I cannot thank you enough for coming and doing this. You've got to come back. We love having these conversations with you. Thank you again so much for being so generous with your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Really good stuff. Yep. Thank you so much. Okay, Martin, let's bring in James now. James, how are you? I am doing very well. It's what a great background. Is that real?
I might partake after the session.
I'm sure everybody asks you that. Okay, look, James, we wanted to have you on and talk about how AI-enabled hospitality can help F&B businesses just become better and more efficient. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about Burnt Ends before we jump into this, yeah?
Okay, yeah. So Burnt Ends, we're a Singapore-based company. We have a number of places here in Singapore and internationally as well. Our heart and soul is cooking with fire, wood fire cooking. So it's Burnt Ends is renowned for it. Meat Smith, our sister restaurant in the city, is a sort of American style smokehouse. And the brewery we've just opened down in Sentosa is obviously a fairly big brewery, but we revolve around that cooking with fire as well. So that's our passion. But how AI plays a part in it, is that your question?
Yeah, so I just want to know, because to me, like, hospitality is fundamentally a human business, right? It's just like me talking to you, or me talking to a barista, or me talking to somebody serving, do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And, if it's all about cooking with fire, I want to talk to whoever's doing the cooking about why fire is better than induction. I don't disagree with you, but I'm just saying, like, that's a cool conversation to have. What role can AI play without weakening that, like, personal interaction that's so important in an F&B business, but still make a great guest experience possible? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you come to our restaurant, you've got that counter seating, which is right at the coalface, so to speak. So you're watching the theatrics, you're watching all the chefs do their magic. But I think to answer your question, we need to distinguish between hospitality and the business side of hospitality. So when we're looking at hospitality, we're all about people. We're reading a table, we're understanding the guest needs and wants, and ultimately creating that, that really great guest experience. On the flip side, when you talk about the business and what makes it ticks, you're looking at the rostering, the purchasing, the forecasting, and compliance, and the recruitment. And AI will play that pivotal role in making sense of what is that chaos. But when it comes to the hospitality side, you need that human touch point. And I don't know whether you agree with me, but you go to your favorite restaurant because of that great food, that awesome beverage menu, the service, and you want that warm welcome, you want that engaging conversation, you want that genuine goodbye. And I don't think AI can provide that. So that's where I sort of draw the line.
So I will tell you, I go to my favorite restaurant for the service. It's really, for me, it's the human interaction. It's really just like, tonight I don't want to do anything at home, and I just want to be served by somebody who understands what I want, and I don't have to explain it to them again. Maybe we can talk a little bit about, I guess, what you would call the back of the house stuff, right? Because while the human interaction is super important in the front of the house, in the back of the house, whether it's ordering or data, do you know what I mean? Or portion map, like all this kind of stuff, what role is AI playing there? And how does the data management have to change in a place like Burnt Ends to make sure that the data that's actually getting fed into whatever AI are using to do this sort of projection or ordering, whatever, is actually good enough or great enough to be able to actually handle this? Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we look at all the back of house, we look at all the time saving that we get from it. So there's a lot of administration work, the research, the reports, the communication, and then the information that you're getting from it. Like I said, the labor reports, the purchasing trends. We're getting that information now and feeding that into AI. and that's helping us, or helping the managers and myself understand what's happening and increasingly why it's happening and what we can do about it. So I think there's a great value and a big gain from AI and its time. And I think as hospitality, we want to focus on that front of house, and we want to optimize that back of house legwork. So AI will play that pivotal role in making sense of that. So yeah, it's exciting times.
Do you have examples, if you can share them, about like where AI has like practically been used to improve operational efficiency? And again, to the extent where like you're running more than one shop at a time, how it's helped to do that as well. Do you know what I mean? Because having one restaurant in one great location is hard. Like that's hard enough. But if you have 6 of them and you're building new stuff and you've now got a brewery on Sentosa Island and stuff like that, like where does AI practically come in and improve the operational efficiency so that all these things can run in tandem and still run better than they were running before you could sort of deploy artificial intelligence into the value chain? Yeah,
so I think we've slowly rolled out AI or the managers. So there's a leadership team and the owners who have sort of put their toe in the water, so to speak, in testing AI. Over time, we've gained a little more confidence with it, and I think the practical area is we've just recently are feeding that live data in from the invoice managing app. So that data comes in real time into a dashboard that we've created. To give you an example, we would follow key items and track them manually, and that was just labor intensive. And historically, we would do it at the end of the month with a P&L being released, so that we were taking weeks to react. Now that we see this being fed in automatically and live, we can make immediate changes and respond to it before the next service. So it's having a profound effect on obviously the bottom line to make changes where necessary or absorb cost or it's been seeing interesting results. And for me personally, when you look at multiple projects, it's helping me with the complexities of the brewery. I'm dealing with 7 or 8 different government agencies doing all the compliance, and to help funnel in all that information and then give clear action points is been an absolute lifesaver, and it's just a huge time saver. And another area would be marketing as well.
All right.
Across all the brands, again, we're doing that dashboard. So we're feeding all the information into there, and it allows us to track all the performances from all the ads that we've done and advertising spend. So we're now using that to make faster, more in-depth decisions on where to focus the budget and future campaigns. So it's interesting.
Do you get a sense that it's helping you and the senior management team make better day-to-day decisions? Like, do you get that sense? And are people actually referencing it? Like, hey, I use this tool to do that thing, and it told me all this information that I might not have known previously or had organized in this specific way. And because of that, I can make a better day-to-day decision on the stuff that I do.
We are. We're cautious. We're cautiously optimistic with AI, but that cautious part is it's only as true as the data is fed. So we need to make sure that what's coming out is 100% accurate. So there's that element, that checkpoint that we need to sort of plug in. But yeah, I'm seeing substantial benefits from it, and it's we'll slowly roll it out even further through the group.
Can you talk to me a little bit, just because you brought it up and it segues nicely into the next thing that I want to talk about, but can you talk a little bit about just the challenge around data gathering and data management for hospitality and of F&B business? Because as with everything else, but if the data that goes into it is not right, then you're going to end up making a lot of bad decisions. But I presume that most F&B businesses, when they were set up, didn't necessarily consider having like a very sort of robust data structure. But now that's really necessary if you're going to use AI to help you guys make decisions. How has that changed the way you've all thought about the data gathering, the data structure, all that kind of stuff?
So it's I liken it to every other element throughout the business that we plug and play. So if it's a new platform, if it's a new standard of service, we introduce that standard operating procedure. So we need to make sure that everything that we're doing is checklists, and we make sure we tick those boxes. So the same applies with AI. We need to make sure that what is going out, what is being said is trackable, and the results are there. So it's an interesting place at the moment.
So one of the go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So one of the things that I said earlier that I kind of focused on a little bit is that, like, when I go to a restaurant or any kind of F&B service, again, I want the guy or the gal behind the counter just to remember me. And frankly, if they remember my name, it's like bonus points, right? But if they're just like, Michael, I know you want your coffee this way, or I know you want your steak cooked this way, or I know you want this kind of dressing on your salad, or here's the knife that you always ask for, you don't need to ask for it anymore. These are real things, by the way, that actually happened to me. I love it, and I will keep going back as long as the food quality doesn't fall below a certain level. Is there a way using technology that you can actually, because we did this in the financial services business. I knew more about my customers than they thought I knew because we built a system using artificial intelligence. This is 15 years ago, that says when this customer trades Toyota, know that it's like one of their core holdings and that they own, $250 million of this stock and they're trading around it. So that when you're dealing with them, you know exactly what they're dealing with. Is there a way digitally and technologically to help the servers as well? So when somebody sits down, they're like, oh, Michael definitely likes it medium. Do you know what I mean? And always gets the balsamic dressing on his salad. Just tell him that. Don't even ask. Do you know what I mean? Is there a way to make that better using AI? And are you guys employing that as well?
Yeah, there's two examples. The platform that we're using at the moment has those, I think, upwards of 100 checkpoints. So it's a matter of feeding that data in and saying, hey, Michael's a return guest. After the third or fourth experiences, we start tracking the favorite drink, the reordered food, where you like to sit, the types of wine that you like. And then that report is brought out to the daily briefing. So it's we've got Michael on table 1, please note X, Y, Z. So it's there, and it becomes that organic flow rather than asking you the question. It's you enjoyed the Shiraz from 2006. Here's the one we've just brought in, and you're blown away from that service. So that's what we're implementing. Well, that's what we have here at Burn Ends. There is a platform that we're trialing out now, and it's more of a whole ecosystem. I sort of touched on it before, but if you historically, hospitality has all these separate pillars of information.
Yep.
So whether it's the POS, the delivery platform, the reservations, it's all been independent. This new platform that we're trialing out has everything from the point of sales to loyalty, to reservations, to marketing. And we're getting a lot more data points to bring that sort of level of service up. So it's good. It's trialing out now, so we'll see the results in a couple of weeks. So, but I'm keen to play with it more.
So I'm super curious how this goes for you as well, and I'll tell you why. I had an experience recently at a restaurant that I frequent, and I wanted to use my loyalty points to kind of buy like an extra thing, whatever it was. And the server actually said to me, and this was awesome. They were like, Michael, actually, just pay for this meal because it'll get you into the next tier. The next tier is more valuable, and you can get more valuable things. And normally I'm skeptical. I'm just like, someone just trying to get me to spend my money and not spend their money. But they were right. But they were right, actually. And the reason why they could be right was because, and I'm not, begrudging them this, but like the system told them that. And that was awesome. And part of the reason why is because it was connected to the POS. It was connected to everything else. And it wasn't a monolithic system, but it was a connected system that allowed them to give me better service. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
And that was awesome. Can I ask you this, and then I'll let you go? Are you also using it to understand the potential of building new concepts, right? And building new ideas and just creating new types of experiences for your customers in ways that you can test it using artificial intelligence that you couldn't test it before, that you literally like had to either build a pop-up shop or some other way to test it, but now you can use artificial intelligence to test these concepts before you roll them out?
Yeah, as what I want to do for my next project for the business is look at that AI implementation, and the way I see it is the AI agents and a digital twin of the business, so a blueprint of the business put into AI, and then we've got the ability to we create visibility. We then then comes the predictability, and then we can run simulations, and that's where I think that answers your question. We can see what happens where, when, and why, and then we can optimize that and look how beneficial it's going to be for the business. So I'm slowly kicking it off. Again, we're at the sort of grassroots of AI, but it's a pretty exciting time, that's for sure.
Awesome. Okay, James, thank you so much for spending so much time with us today. I really appreciate it. Really insightful stuff. Thank you.
No worries, mate. See you soon.
Bye for now.
Bye.
Okay, Martin, let's bring in Beniamino. Good afternoon. How are you? It's great to have you here. Did I pronounce your first name properly?
You can call me Ben, easier.
Of course. That's the easy. Anybody can do that. I want to get it right, though, man. That's my job.
Okay, my name is Beniamino.
That's what I said. I love it. I did it. Okay. I won't ask you the obvious question of where you're from. But anyway, it's great to have you here. We wanted to talk about AI-powered logistics and just how it's taking complexity and making it easier for food and beverage brands. Before we do that in detail, tell us a little bit about Ship D2D.
Okay, so Ship Door to Door, it's AI platforms that enables customers to book online shipments from A to B, let's say from Italy to Thailand, in a couple of minutes, in which we can also provide to them not only a complete door-to-door shipments, but we also provide to them also IOR, importer of record services, meaning that we can become in their behalf their importers and delivery to the final destination. We started this project a couple of years ago because I was before an important distributor of food and beverage from Italy, and I started to find problems because I need to manage many different people inside, middlemen from the warehouse in Italy, from the transporter, the freighter, the custom agent, the warehouse, and the final transfer to the destination of my goods. And I realized I need to solve this type of problems. And then I realized also the complexity, how to manage all the regulation between FDA, custom, excise, and so on, how to manage this product. So therefore, the creation of a portals became something easier because other people started to ask me the same service I was able to provide by myself for door-to-door in LCL temperature control. And that came, the first version was called door-to-door logistics. And after that, we realized one thing. In order to scale up the operation and do bigger numbers, the only solution was to avoid the main bottlenecks. The bottlenecks was me, how to speed up the operation since I was managing everything. And we realized that the first problems was how to inbound all the requests of the customers from I want to ship from A to B, translate in a jargon. Customers prefer to chat with you on WhatsApp, Line, email. They prefer to have send you our documents, and you need to try to take all this information and put inside of the portals and working on it. So we realized, okay, how do we manage and make this all automatic? AI in this case came to help us. Second step was how do I put all my knowledge, my more than 25 years of experience, how to export, import, move goods in a way that not only me, but also my team and also the customers can can have this information quickly. That's why came the new version that we started developed last year, and we finished and launched it in July of this year, Ship Door to Door, which enables the customers to make questions like, I want to ship pasta from Italy to Thailand. Provide me all the information in a couple of seconds. AI provides this information, give a range of prices, and if the customer wants to continue, okay, we can start the booking and we can start all the process. And in the case they are looking also for IOR service, we can inbound all the requests, make the license in their behalf, and start the shipment in a couple of days, not in weeks or months, that usually happens.
So how do you, what models do you use? I presume you're using some LLMs in the background to be able to answer some of those questions. How do you decide which model to use, and how do you decide whether the information that's coming out of that model is actually correct?
Okay, we use in this case, at this moment, Gemini, The main reason, because as a startup, we were able to have credits from that. So we said, okay, let's start to use this. Our actual system is now open also to use also other models like ChatGPT and Claude. We are looking also to implement also for doing them and using for the different opportunity. One thing I have to say is that we are not using the LLM for calculating the price. We tried at the beginning and realized that AI tends to hallucinate. Why? Because there's a lot of information they have to gather from different type of documents and database, and this make them to hallucinate and give wrong answer.
Exactly.
So all the calculation are done by coding in the old way, but AI can instead fulfill all the other type of gap that are inside of an operation. So getting the information in a chit chat. You want to ship from A to B. What do you want to ship? I want to ship pasta. Which type of pasta? What is the SH code? Confirm us. Which date you are wishing to ship, or what is your estimate time of arrival? We have also to translate the jargon of the customers, the commercial one, which is I want to ship from A to B, in something that is also useful for our suppliers, the freight forwarders, who talks a different complete jargon. So shipping from A to B, it means is a 20 feet CIF food containers, and so this type of jargon is complex also for the customers. This is what, for example, the freight forwarders are needing in order to make you a proper quotation that you can use.
How do you make sure that both sides of this transaction are actually ready for the use of AI? Do you know what I mean? Because and the reason why I'm asking is because the markets in which you're dealing, the suppliers are fragmented, the buyers are fragmented, right? In some cases, obviously, the buyers are not as fragmented, but there's a lot of like little bits and pieces going on here, and not all of them are as technologically advanced as they need to be. How do we make sure that like all of the information coming from one place is just ready to be used by artificial intelligence and vice versa?
Okay. So what I did, this was a problem also for me at the beginning when I started to do with it.
For sure.
3 years ago, I had to teach my IT personnel to understand my jargon. They also taught me about their jargon. So I
Why?
understood why, because I didn't understand what was, for example, a dump. So I said, okay, you explain me. Now I explain you what is, for example, CIF or XWorks, and I give you specific terms also to calculate a revenue tolerance or a chargeable weight, because this can differ between air and sea. So in between, what I tried to do is that I took all this experience and all this information in thousands of documents that we have already inside. So invoice, packing list, documents, import records, duties, and so on. And we created a data store, a data room where we give it to the AI. So we put the AI in a guardrail. Right now, otherwise the AI can go on internet, find a date or a name or a value and put inside. We said, no, you cannot go in outside. You have to read our document, find a similarity on the methods that we are talking about, and provide the most accurate response. So if you reach 95% of accuracy, fine. Otherwise, you escalate to an operators that can just only give a yes or no, and you can continue this.
So how do you do your own data management? This is a question I like to ask people because I think it's part of the value chain that people overlook, in the sense that like the more you transact, the more you become agentic, the more you use artificial intelligence, the more data you're creating. And most people, when they start a business, aren't thinking about, I need to make sure my data is in the right structure. It's more just like, I need to do enough sales to justify the hiring that I'm doing, if that makes sense. So now that you look back and you think about it, you're like, okay, my data has to be in the right format. It has to be like available. It has to be accessible. How has it changed the way you do data management and you think about data management now that you're deploying all of this artificial intelligence to help you become more efficient?
So what we did is like the same process as we started to create our first data room, about 100,000 documents. The idea was, okay, we have different formats. We have, I give an example. Most of the times when I work with freight forwarders, they don't send me a quotation in a specific format like a JSON file to upload.
No, they could just send you like a handwritten note. I mean, it could just be like $10 for 100 pieces.
Screenshot. Most of the times they send me a screenshot or just a few words on WhatsApp. So we are realized, and also the customer do the same. They just contact us on WhatsApp and they says, I want to ship from A to B. Okay, so we start a chit chat. So we said, okay, let's put the AI in the middle. Let's do the AI, the chit chat, retrieve all the information, organize it, ask the customers, is this what you want to do? Fine. Okay, we can go to the next steps. Once we have all the information prepared for our bookings, for our quotation, we can send an RFQ to the suppliers. We add all the information that the suppliers is looking for. So if he's looking for our containers, we need to say if it's a 20 feet or 40 feet, if it's a temperature control or not, which is the port of loading or the port of departure, and or the port of arrival or discharge. So we provide all this information so that also the freight forwarder is able to provide us a quick reply, because time is what is the most essential in our business. So once we started to understand about this, we said, okay, we need to transform all of our documentation that is maybe in multiple format, from Excel, PDF, docs, screenshot, and so on, in something that we can provide to an LLM, can read, create metadata, JSON files, or in this case, in the database that, okay, I can understand what we're talking about. So even the chat in WhatsApp, we copy all the chat, and then we say to the LLM, please discard if I'm telling to the guy Happy Christmas, Happy Easter. What is important when he's talking to me about the next shipment? Right. That is important. You need to take over, and we need that information to be stored somewhere that it can be used also for making the bookings.
So what other kind of stuff changes when you sort of have an AI view on whatever's happening in the logistics space? Do you know what I mean? So like, if you can understand what the cargo is, what's being shipped, kind of before determining how it's supposed to move, how can you reason about a shipment rather than just like processing a book? Do you know what I mean? Like someone just has a booking, they just book it, or you know what it is and you can say like, this is actually what the pathway should be for this type of product now that artificial intelligence has been deployed. What changes there?
Yes, okay. It was already done, let's say, from the freight forwarders. Even when I was working and I was shipping for myself, and I was always asking which is the best route. Normally, what we provide to the customers is, okay, you're shipping what? 1 or 2 pallets. Okay, we have 2 options. You can ship by air. It will cost you a lot, but it will arrive very fast, and we can book almost every day. You want to ship and have something cheaper? Okay, we can try to combine a consolidation, make it an LCL, less than a container load. It will take you a little bit more time. Will cost you for sure less than shipping by air. The same happens when customers request us, I want to ship, but I want to find the fastest route. So normally fastest route that maybe they don't stop in every port, or they start from a specific port like Genova or Rotterdam, and they need to have a fast transit time. They cost, for example, more. We give these 2 options to the customer. So the AI right now is speeding up our process. We don't need to contact multiple suppliers. The AI is contacting them, requesting most of the possibility, opportunity, and then retrieve this information, calculate which is the best for the customers and also for us, and provide to them almost instantly or in a short period of time.
What's more important, or is there just a balance between like speed and cost? Do you know what I mean? Like in particular for raw goods, like if I'm thinking about, you know, I want to import fresh Maine lobsters.
Okay. Fresh Maine lobster, yes. In this case, it will be only by air, because there is
right? But speed's more important in this case than cost, yeah?
Yes, it depends on the type of products of the customers. I have customers which we tend to suggest also our customer based also on the historic line of the price.
Go ahead.
Normally during the year you have fluctuation on the price determined by the high season or low season. Peak season normally start between September to December. There is a peak season, especially from China to the US during summer, because everybody wants to have the goods before starting all the festivity from Labor Day, Thanksgiving, Halloween, and Christmas. And there are periods of the year where the prices are dropping a lot, like December and January for the Chinese New Year. So nobody's shipping in that period. So we tend also to tell our customers there are some window during the year where you can ship at a cheaper price. And you can have also the possibility to ship at a fast transit time. Other case, we have customers says, man, I have goods that needs to be arrived in Thailand in the next 6 months. I can ship today, I can ship next month. I don't care about a transit time. So in this case, we try to find for them, which is also the best option for them to be cheaper.
Can we talk a little bit about, you know, you live in Thailand, yeah?
Yeah.
So you're probably very familiar with the rules and regulations around import into Thailand. And they change periodically, but they're also different in every country. And it requires some sort of management time, but it also requires a whole bunch of knowledge as well. How do you build into the system this understanding of like what the rules and regulations are around what can be imported? And then how does that get communicated to people that want to bring stuff in or sell stuff from abroad into this country or any other country, frankly, to where they're to where they're sending their goods?
Okay. First of all, it's very easy to create an LLM that's scrap on internet with all the HS code, all the duties, all the regulation. It's quite simple. But in fact, most of this information online, they're also old. It's very easy. And this is a problem. So what I did, especially because we are focusing on food and beverage, which is a regulated product for the FDA, excise, alcohol, and so on. What I did was to put inside our data warehouse all our possible exception, all the situation case that we had. I created also the manual for my team how to use when we have to ship food and beverage, dry temperature or temperature control. If it's coffee, if it's wine, you need to contact this guy. Since we have also a company which is an import of records, we are merchant of records. We do import and export. We have already all this database for more than 15 years. So it was quite easy to say, okay, let's put all this bunch of information inside. Let's use the AI to extract what is important, double check, and then use this as a guardrail where the AI can read it and understand how to work on it. So there is also a big work on the back to create this information to give to the AI.
So you actually mentioned something really important, this idea of being an importer of record, yeah? Because this changes the relationship between the goods that are coming in and, you know, because you are now taking over. It's almost like power of attorney in some way, right? You're like, we are importing this, and then we're distributing it to people that may or may not want it. Obviously, you wouldn't place an order unless you had an order for somebody else to follow on it and buy it from you.
Exactly.
But how does it change the reliability you expect from your LLMs if you now are the IOR? Do you know what I mean? Because now, like, you have a responsibility not just for making sure the logistics work, but making sure that everything else around the logistics work as well, and that it's all legal, yeah?
Yes. In fact, we double-checked. One of the main features that we put inside at the beginning was before shipping any goods from Europe to Thailand or from Thailand to the US or in China, is that before we ship, we already double-check all the documentation within all the parties. I experienced a lot of times in my life that the shipping was already started, the goods were on the sea, and the bill of lading was wrong because somebody missed a name, somebody was missing, there was an indication it was incorrect, and you need to change before the goods arrive at destination. And if the goods arrive at destination, there is something wrong, your goods remain at the port, and then you have to pay detention or demurrage. There are fees that you have to pay in order to fix. Or in the worst case, you cannot even import the goods, and you need to pay many important fees. So AI we are using in this case to double check all the documentation priorly, to check all the issue that could arise just before we start to ship. And AI in this case is helping the team, me as well, to perform more faster. If before we were able to manage 3-4 shipments per day, now we're able to manage 10, 15, and the aim is to go to 20 to 30 because we are able to manage more and more documentation and using AI to control that. And if I can say something more,
please.
We are a 4PL. So normally 4PL are those who stay above the third-party logistics, the carriers, the freight forwarders, custom brokers. So we manage and orchestrate all the shipments in behalf of the customer and the suppliers, which is sending or receiving the goods. But being an IOR, in this case, we take responsibility on the goods when they arrive. And also, as you mentioned before, a power of attorney. This is quite common in the US. Normally, power of attorneys or custom brokers who are also importer for records in behalf of the customers is quite common. It's not very common in Europe and also in Thailand and in Southeast Asia. So we found that all these matters of having knowledge about the products, taking responsibility could be an enormous advantage because creating a website for just booking is the most easiest things you can make it.
For sure.
Creating an AI on top and layer, yes, takes a little bit of time, but it's also easy. Being also responsible and know how to bring goods from one country into Thailand or other Southeast Asian country with all the regulation, that is a part of a big game to do it.
That's really hard. One more thing, and then I let you go. How has the way you thought about cybersecurity changed as you continue to deploy more and more artificial intelligence, and in some cases agentic AI, where it increases the sort of potential vulnerabilities inside of your digital business because you've just created more surfaces for attack? I'm just curious how you think differently about cybersecurity.
Okay. cybersecurity, like privacy and other regulation, are something we are aware of because we need to follow up all the rules when we ship,
Yep.
about responsibility for the goods we are importing or shipping, and so on. We realized one thing, and as we realized that AI is not stupid, AI is quite smart, but can hallucinate very easily. It can make mistakes, and we cannot afford to make these mistakes in case of for the customers. We realize, okay, let's use AI for what is very good. AI is very good to talk to the customers, act like a chatbot, retrieve information, organize them. Fine, let's do only this. We use in this case MCP service. We use code. We write the code because we want to control everything in our process. I understand that in the future, and in this case is one AI that is talking to the customers, to us, and to the supplier. I understand that in the future, it will be more and more AI. It will be more easier in the future, maybe in the next 5, 10 years, that my AI will talk directly with the AI of my customers or my carriers or my supplier. And in that case, I understand that the risk that the AI can start to create criminal situation in which, oh, can we ship illegal stuff? No, I don't want to do it, but
No,
you know
I
what?
don't want to do
There's
this
a
at all.
possibility.
Right.
Something can happen.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to be involved in that at all. Okay, man. Look, this has been really interesting, Beniamino. Thank you so much for coming and doing
Thank you
this
very
today. I
much,
really
Michael, for the
appreciate your time.
opportunity.
We should meet in person at some point. We live in the same town.
Sure. Yeah,
Thank you
for
so much,
sure,
man.
for sure. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye for now. Okay, Martin, let's bring in Dr. Rustom Kanga. Good afternoon. How are you doing today? Actually, it's not afternoon for you. I should have checked. Evening, indeed, it is evening for you. How are you doing this evening?
Excellent. Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, there's a lot to cover with you today, but before we jump in, why not tell us a little bit about iOmniscient?
So, have you started the session, or?
We have indeed started the session. We are recording live.
Okay. So, let me tell you about iOmniscient. Humans use their eyes, their ears, their nose to understand the world around them.
Yep.
And that is what we do. We do video, sound, and smell analysis. So it's like having a person around, even when there's no one around. So people put in hundreds of cameras everywhere and microphones and things like that. But who's watching them? No one. So that's what our system does. It'll tell you what's happening, and it'll take appropriate action.
So the video and the sound stuff makes perfect sense to me. Can you talk to me about the other sensory thing that you just mentioned, smell? In other words, having a camera and having a microphone somewhere is something that we've been doing, I would say, for at least a couple of decades, at least in a way that's ubiquitous. But how does the smell stuff come into play, and why does it matter?
A lot of people make cameras and microphones, and as you say, that's been around for many years. We actually make our own electronic nose, and in fact, that's been around for a couple of decades as well.
Super duper.
And it's been used for all sorts of applications. For instance, for detecting gas leaks in oil refineries and so on, but also for things like food manufacturing. In milk factories, they bring the milk in from the farms. It might have gone back bad in transit. We can smell it and tell them, hey, don't put that into the process, otherwise you'll spoil the whole batch. Right? It can be used for a number of different things like that. And in fact, most recently, we've developed a medical device where you can smell the breath of a person and use that for early stage diagnosis of things like lung cancer, breast cancer, and things like that.
So interesting. How does... So look, you've been at this for a while. I just want to put this question in the right format, right? You've been at this for a while. And artificial intelligence, you and I have been around long enough to know that, like, AI, this is not something new, but the way we are deploying AI and the way we can use it is different today than it was, let's just say, 3 or 4 years ago. Can you talk to me about just the excitement inside of your own business around the new tools that have been developed in the last, like, let's just say 3 or 4 years, and then how you've deployed those and how it's changed the way you do what you do and serve the customers that you serve?
Well, we've been going for 25 years, so we are 25 years old as a company, and you'd mentioned that you wanted to talk about agentic AI.
Please.
We actually implemented a system back in 2013 for the Singapore Smart City, which was an agentic AI system, right? So even the term is new, but the concept has been around for a while.
Yep.
And we've implemented our systems in about 70 countries. So many of these things that we might talk about today are not necessarily new. They haven't turned up in the last 3 or 4 years. In fact, if a system is only 3 or 4 years old, I would say it may not be robust enough.
So I don't disagree with you,
well.
and let me give you some context, and then you can talk to me
Yes.
some more about what you're talking about now. Agentic AI is kind of a cool term, but like we used automated and systemic stock and commodity trading at Goldman Sachs 20 years ago. Okay,
Yes.
but we didn't call it agentic AI. We just called it algorithmic trading. But to be fair, it was an agent that was running, that was taking in information, and that was executing trades, frankly, in a way that was way more autonomous in a way than most agents are reacting today.
Yes.
But the tools have changed. Okay, so the things that we used to build that agentic AI back in 2003 or 2006 are very different than the tools you have today. And frankly, they're easier. So the development of those tools are different, and the tools themselves are different. How has that changed the way you look at your customers and the things you can provide to them? Because now just simply building things for them is way easier than it was 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yes. AI is such a broad term. It covers so
Absolutely.
many different technologies and, in fact, different environments. You mentioned trading. In fact, most AI today handles data. Right? Most companies, most systems are talking about manipulating data and managing it and so on.
Absolutely.
We are focused on the physical world. As I said, we look at video, sound, smell, and so the type of agentic capability we require, and we in fact have been calling it autonomous response systems, right? But the type of agentic requirement we have is to actually do something physical in the world. For instance, for the Sydney Metro, which is a driverless train, we provide a safety system where if somebody walks on the track, the system will automatically stop the train. Now, so you'd say that's an agentic system, but the difference is that if you make a mistake in your data when you're doing a stock trade, you might lose a little money. If you make a mistake on the train, you might kill someone.
Yeah, somebody dies. Yeah.
For mission critical applications, you have to have a very different approach to AI. As you know, with AI, the system might have hallucinations. In other words, it might guess if it doesn't know the right answer, right? In a physical system, if it guesses and it guesses wrong, it can be quite, it could result in a disaster. So we've got to build systems that are very, very, very robust, where you can be sure that it's not going to give you a false answer. Right. So there are many issues like that you have in the physical world that you don't have in the, when you're just dealing with data.
So what other things are different? Like, do you laugh at people when they talk about building guardrails around agentic AI because you've been building guardrails for the last 25 years?
You have to build guardrails, yes. You have to build guardrails across AI as a whole. In fact, it's not just AI, it's with any technology. Any technology can be used for good or evil. A knife can be used to cut a birthday cake, it can be used to kill someone.
It's not the first time you've said that, I'm guessing, but yeah.
Yes, and it's the same with any technology. With nuclear technology, it can be used to cure cancer, it can be used to, to make bombs. And it's the same with AI. So you have to have guardrails. It really depends on how we as humans decide to use the technology, and especially if it's an application where the outcomes are could harm people, then we've got to worry about how we cope with that.
Have you seen in the past, let's say, 4 or 5 years, an expanding market for the types of products that you're providing or the types of services that you're providing, because the broader world and the broader community has just become more comfortable with the deployment of artificial intelligence, whether in the physical world or just in the data world. But now it's like less convincing people that this is the right way to behave, and more just like showing them what the outcomes can be if they do deploy this type of technology.
Yes, I think the big players have certainly uh, made artificial intelligence more acceptable.
Mm.
You know, 20 years ago, people would think it was smoke and mirrors, and you had to really convince them that it would work. And now we don't have to do that. People want to have AI. They just don't know how to implement it necessarily,
Mm.
right? Because they don't have experience at it. And so a lot of our time goes in educating the market, helping them understand how it can be used, how it can be misused, what the challenges are in implementing it. Um, Ultimately, say for our system, you talked of cameras and microphones and things like that. Cameras are the eyes. What we provide is the brain.
So has it
Right?
become easier? Yeah. So has it become easier to analyze video using today's technology? And
Yes.
if it has, then like how has it changed the way people make decisions based on what they see in that video? Because you're right, like I see videos being generated in elevators. I see them being generated in tunnel. I see videos being generated everywhere. And to be fair, I think all the time, like, who's watching? No one's watching this stuff, and you don't know when something you have to watch is going to occur. So how have you deployed this technology, new technology, to determine what's actually happening in the video and what is a signal and what is just noise?
Yes. You've asked many questions, and I could spend an hour talking about them,
Dude,
which I won't.
no, spend 20 minutes. I mean, but I'm super curious about this, right? Because I think people misunderstand how this technology is actually being deployed to understand what's happening in a video, right?
All right.
And,
So
and I
first of
think it's
all,
really important because it's so much information in a video. And as the video goes from like 1080p to 4K to 6K to 8K, again, you're having way much more information, but you're also creating more noise. So how do you use the tech to, again, get the signals, ignore the noise, and understand exactly what you're trying to have as an outcome? Because that's kind of important, yeah?
yes, you're absolutely right. So, who's watching all these cameras? People put in thousands of cameras. Who's watching them? No one,
No one.
usually.
Yeah,
Or
exactly.
people are trying to watch it, but studies have shown that if you're sitting there watching only two monitors, after 10 minutes you miss half the action. After 20 minutes you see nothing. So
Yeah.
it's not an effective way to actually run your system. So from a very early stage, we started putting in these autonomous response systems
Mm.
where the camera will understand what is happening. It'll then figure out who's involved in it, and after that, it'll figure out who should do something about it. So if somebody leaves a bag in the airport, the system will know the bag has been left. It'll understand who's left it. It'll track the person who left it because he might have gone by that time. And then once it finds him on a different camera, it'll find the nearest, say, policeman and tell him where to go and what to do.
Mm.
And it'll send him the little video of that guy and so on. So that whole process is what we provide in terms of autonomous response, right? And it's, as I said, the issue with all AI is, first of all, using different techniques, because today when people talk of AI, they primarily think in terms of deep learning. If you want to detect a dog, you get a million images of dogs, you label them, you train the system, and next time you see a dog, you know it's a dog.
Right.
But we have customers like, say, the Hong Kong prisons who come to us and say, we want to detect suicides. How do you get a million people to commit suicide for you to train your system? You can't.
No,
So
let's not do that.
in real life, the problem is you don't have the data sets for training your system for many real life situations.
Mm.
The data does not exist.
So how do you
So
how do you do
so
that though? Because
we've developed
Go ahead.
Yes, so we've developed a new type of AI called intuitive AI that we can train with maybe only 2, 3, 10 data sets. Because there are so few data sets, we do not need deep learning. And because of that, we do not need GPUs. So we can run our systems very computing light on a simple computer. For which, and for that reason, Intel loves us. Recently, we were Intel's Alliance Partner of the Year. And of course, needless to say, NVIDIA does not particularly smile on us.
I can imagine if you're not buying any GPUs, why would they even care?
Right. But that has an impact because the fact that we do not buy GPUs or do not need GPUs means that the system is less expensive. You don't need as much power to run it because GPUs based systems require about 16 times the power of a normal system. That reduces your carbon footprint by an enormous amount. You're not reliant on very, very large data centers to make your system run and all that sort of stuff. So there are many impacts from using this type of system.
Right. Look, as your customers see that, the models that are being discussed that are being sent out by like OpenAI and Anthropic and Alibaba with Quen and all of this stuff that's open weight out here, are they putting pressure on you to do more things using more powerful artificial intelligence because they have more information now about the way this works, or are they reliant on the fact that like you understand this better than they do, and they're happy that there are no GPUs in this sense because you're not using some of these more expensive and sort of larger LLMs?
It's almost addressing a different type of problem. When you go to these LLMs and VLMs and so on,
Yep.
They are focused on analyzing an image. You can give them an image and say, what's in this
Sure.
image? And it'll say, oh, there's a dog and there's a man and there's a boat and whatever else there is. But in real life, you're not looking at an image.
No.
You're looking at real-time video, right? Real time.
Yeah.
And so you're processing these things at 6, 10, 20 frames a second. And you've got to not just understand what's in the image, but what is changing. Oh, there's a man. He's having a fight. He's hit someone. And the other guy's fallen down. Who was the man? We need to do a face recognition on a man. And the man is not standing in front of you, looking straight at you, so that you can do a simple face recognition. You need to do face recognition at 20 meters away,
Right,
on somebody who's not looking straight at you in a crowd with 20 other people around. Right. So coping with that sort of real life environment is what we specialize in. And it's very different to having a very sophisticated VLM which will tell you exactly what's in the image. But first, you've got to know that you want to see what's in that image, right? So you start off with an event that triggers something that so you start with detecting an event and moving on from that point.
So do you guys build your own models?
Yes, primarily. And in fact, what we do is we talk about scenario-based AI. So we actually think through, we detect an incident, and then we go from that to understanding the incident, to understanding who's involved in the incident. It could be cars, it could be people, and so on. And then finally, it results in an autonomous response capability. And in this process, we might actually use other people's models, right? So if we get to a point where we don't understand what's in an image, we might go and ask Google to say, okay, here we have an image, help us understand what's happening here. And they can give us that sort of information. So we are not against using other people's models, but it's more than just using somebody's single model, right? It's addressing the whole process.
Yeah. So do you use some of the open weight models as well? I presume it's very situation specific. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
It is very situation specific, and we can use it, but we might use it sporadically. right? You're processing video for 24 hours, and at some point in the day, you require to use somebody
Right.
else's model. The system will dynamically realize that and go out and ask for the information and get it back.
And to what level are humans still involved in helping make some of these decisions? Like, how important has it become for humans to just remain inside the loop so that you can understand, like, that, again, that you're dealing with signals that matter as opposed to just noise?
I think in many situations, it's very important, at least at this stage, to have humans in the loop. I talked about that example of the driverless train.
Yep.
So that's one where we've made the system robust enough. We've got tools in place and so on to ensure that we get virtually 100% accuracy and no false alarms, or very few, right? But there are situations where the technology is not that robust. For instance, let's talk of defense systems. People were talking to us about, okay, so you can have an autonomous weapon where you look at a crowd of people and you say, oh, that guy over there, Johnny, is the enemy, and let's shoot him from a distance.
Right.
And I don't think the technology is robust enough yet to be used in that sort of environment. It's too dangerous, because even if it's 99.9% correct, you still have that 0.1% chance that you'll kill someone incorrectly.
What role does synthetic data play here? One of the things you said before in one of the examples you gave was like, there's just simply not enough data. You can't create enough data. You can't get enough data for it, right? Because the data sets are just too small. But what role does synthetic data play, where you do sort of scenario analysis on synthetic data as opposed to real data?
People have tried to simulate situations and create data, right, to train their systems, and that has a role to play. That's one of the technologies available. But again, it never replaces the real life situation, because, for instance, in that example I gave you of
prisons,
right? If somebody is trying to kill himself, he'll find a totally different way to do it that you never thought of before.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not just in that scenario. It's also in things like predictive maintenance. New equipment might have a mean time between failure of, say, 10 years. So you don't have data on how and when it will fail, right? So you cannot train your system to say, look, it's going to fail because of this or that, right? So there are many situations like that where you just don't have the data, and you then have to use other things. You have to, as I said, we have this thing called intuitive AI, which uses the other ways that humans think. Deep learning is primarily uses the memory and experience aspect of our thinking capability for humans.
I like it.
But humans think in many other ways. They don't just use their memory. They use their logic. They use their creative ability. They do many other things. And that's what we try and capture in doing the scenario-based AI.
Super interesting stuff. Okay, Dr. Kanga, I'm going to have to let you go. Thank you so much for spending time with us today. Fascinating stuff. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I hope your listeners enjoy it too.
I'm sure they do. And you did say, like, I have a lot of questions. That's kind of my job. So hopefully I'm doing my job and I'm doing it well, but I don't know. You're smiling, so hopefully I've done something well. It's not clear to me, but thank you again for your time. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
You
Bye.
too. Bye for now. Okay, Martin, let's bring in Parsa. Hey, man, how are you? I am doing very well. Where are you based?
Side of all the action.
I got it. Don't say that. Don't ever say that again. God, I don't like when people do that. Don't sell yourself short, man. So founder and CEO at ABR Labs, we want to talk about how governed agentic AI is changing the way regulated businesses make decisions and operate. But maybe first tell us a little bit about ABR.
Yeah, absolutely. I started ABR last November. I come from a background from financial risk. And we've actually applied this almost as a thesis into our own company, where we apply a risk mitigation lens into the agentic deployments that we do. I think in this space, it's no longer really about capability, but more so ensuring that the deployments that we fulfill have a lot of trust baked into them, right? Agents act quite stochastically, they act quite randomly. So when you're deploying into regulated environments, you want to make sure that they follow what they're supposed to do.
Do you want to explain to people what stochastically means so people can get a better understanding?
In simple terms, randomly, all over the place. Yeah. I think a great way to actually mitigate that is that we apply a deterministic, somewhat binary layer on top of what we build. So the agents actually do the tasks, they reason and take the appropriate steps. But we have a approval gate that ensures that the end product is what it's supposed to be.
So how do you take what you've learned from operating in the financial world and from risk mitigation there into the spaces where you're operating now?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we are operating within regulated finance. So a lot of the engagements that we do are with accountants, wealth management, lenders, brokers. And I've been able to apply the knowledge I've received in the past few years dealing with regulators and different compliance frameworks and applying that same knowledge into the deployments that we do.
And what are some of the biggest challenges that you're running into? Is it just explaining to people how this stuff works? Is it building into a specific type of infrastructure? Like, what are some of the biggest challenges you have?
Yeah, honestly, I think most people expect the biggest challenges to be compute power or the models itself. I don't think it's neither of those. And a lot of these protocols are being standardized now through MCPs, which is essentially a USB port for agents. The missing infrastructure is trust and context. Now, trust covers a few things. It covers risk, data security, governance, and context is actually what you're feeding the AI models itself. A lot of companies seem to think that if we dump all of this context, it's just going to do the job magically. But that's not really the case. What we really focus on, especially in the earlier discovery stages, is context selection. So what do we actually want the agent to see and have permission to?
Right. But how do you do that? How do you create a scenario where the context selection, where you have confidence, in the context selection?
It can be quite tricky. A lot of data is quite scattered in businesses. So our first step usually is organizing all this data into a single source of truth, we like to call it. We use a program called Obsidian, and you're able to actually amalgamate all of these pieces of data into one place. And you're also able to set out different permissions for different team members and different agents as well, right?
Yeah.
So,
No, go ahead.
So essentially you have this big block of information at the top, and then you can kind of layer it down one by one, categorize between team member that owns the agent and then the agent itself.
So do you think people underestimate how, because I feel like, and I've had tons of these conversations over the past 6 months, but I feel like one of the things I understand now for sure is that people take their data structure for granted. You know what I mean? They, like, there's so much pressure from the C-suite and from the boardroom to just do anything in the artificial intelligence space that when they start making the case that, like, our data is actually not in the right place, we need to spend more money on getting our data right first. Senior managers just like frustrated with just do the AI thing. But do you think people are underestimating just how much the data actually matters?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is also a very, very wide gap between expectation and reality. There was even a survey that came out last week where 75% of business leaders expect that AI is going to reshape their internal processes, but only 1 in 5 are actually equipped to deploy that today, right? So there's the actual reality of it where businesses aren't fully ready to deploy agents. But then there's also that gap between knowledge where C-suite just thinks that AI is this magic button that's going to solve everything, but it's far from that.
Yeah, I mean, don't you think that the humans themselves have to understand what the processes are? Because when you implement artificial intelligence, you're basically saying we want to automate something in a way that a human can't do. So simply taking the same process and sort of, unleashing artificial intelligence on it seems to me to be counterintuitive. Are you finding this as well, that like the workflow itself actually has to change to make the AI, particularly the agentic AI, actually more efficient? Because now it's doing a process that a machine should be doing as opposed to something that a human should do. And that those are two completely different things.
Yeah, absolutely. And even when you're looking at software, let's say, I work at a sales company and I use Salesforce every day.
Yep.
Salesforce was designed on great UX, right? User experience.
Yep.
But now deploying an agent into Salesforce is just not going to be as efficient as it should be. And there's a new term, AX, right? So software where the agent is actually optimized to use it. So we are seeing a shift in how software is being built. And I also think there's going to be a new industry where software is actually designed just for agents, headless SaaS in a way.
So that's what, Salesforce is actually a really good example of this. I love when people bring this up because Salesforce actually has built something called Salesforce 360 where they've essentially rewritten their entire tech stack and said everything is going to be MCPs or model context protocol available or accessible. And also every function that exists inside of Salesforce 360 is also going to have an API associated with it too. So this is at the forefront of this redevelopment of stuff as well. But what happens to the companies that don't do that, that don't rewrite their software? And I'm not saying from scratch per se, but that don't make it all MCP available and don't have APIs for every function inside of it. Where does agentic AI fit in there? And then how does it become most effective in your opinion?
Yeah, now we're opening up a new question of where all of this goes in the next few years.
Yeah, I hate that as a question because the answer to that is I don't know and you don't know either. But the point is that like there is going to be a bifurcation between what happens for companies that actually do this and don't. And at some level, you've probably seen this as well. There's some functionality that sits inside some of these big SaaS platforms that everybody uses. And then there's, let's say, 90% of it that nobody even cares about.
Yeah.
And if you're any good at all at using Codex or, Claude 4.8 or Fable 5 to do agentic coding, you can write some of that functionality yourself and completely disintermediate this. But I think Salesforce has done a really good job of not having that happen. What happens to the companies that don't do that?
Yeah, you can, but just going back to your previous point on using Codex or Claude, it's absolutely possible to build an agent in 30 minutes per se. But I think an assumption that a lot of people have, which can be quite dangerous, is when you're actually deploying these agents in a commercial environment.
For sure.
Where they are touching client data, where they are touching maybe payments, that is where a lot of the challenges actually arise. So we've actually seen some companies build out agents themselves and it's completely messed up their internal systems, or it's gone and done something it shouldn't have, especially on data sovereignty. In Australia, we live in a highly regulated environment around data sovereignty. So you have to take extra precautionary steps around PII or reversible tokenization, where a lot of people that are hopping on Claude and seeing the capabilities just aren't paying attention to. In terms of companies that fail to deploy agents, I think the most logical answer would be they're just going to fall behind. But I think going one layer past that is that if we look at all the companies that are deploying agents now, what is going to keep them afloat? It's actually going to become companies that are deploying fleets of agents. So once everyone has agents, no one's really winning anymore. The differentiating factor becomes companies that have deployed hundreds of agents and they've actually designated a new role like an agent supervisor, which actually manages a fleet of agents.
But wait a second, why do you think that people that or companies that invest in agents and deploy agents, if everybody does it, then no one's winning?
Well, right now, the differentiator you can have as a company is deploying these agents because a lot of companies are still catching up and are still adopting artificial intelligence systems. Once everyone has that, no one really has that upper hand. So then the upper hand becomes how many agents can we actually deploy without something going wrong? And that's where we really specialize in, by applying this layer of governance on top of agents.
So do you think that there will be companies that are going to be born or have already been born? They create a brand around sort of, what's the right word? Agentic trust and agentic compatibility, in the sense that, okay, company ABC, you don't build your own agents. But in the same way that, like, I can use a credit card from Visa and everybody in the world trusts it because they know Visa's a robust, dynamic, you know what I mean, like, great company that's going to, like, meet its obligations. Are we going to see companies crop up that do the same thing on the agentic side? So then we know that, like, if agent ABC is created by company XYZ, that by definition it's trustable, it's got the right governance around it, and it's not going to do like nutty things because the company that built it isn't some company that has no experience with agentic AI, but that's all they do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think to some degree, yes. But I actually think where trust sits is that governance layer. So companies can actually go out and build out their own agents. But what you need is these deterministic functions that stop the agents from causing any incidents, right? One way that we've done this is that in some of the workflows that we've deployed is we've implemented what we call an approval gate. So the agent will actually figure out what the task is, initiate it, complete it end to end to the end. Mm-hmm. Before it sends it out, it goes to an approval gate. Everything is checked by a human, and then it's sent out, right? Now, how do we take that approval gate from a human doing it to an agent doing it? That is the key question.
Yeah, I mean, that was going to be my question to you, because the approval gate seems to me, particularly for humans doing it, feels a little inefficient. Do you know what I mean? It's like, let's automate all this stuff because we know that the artificial intelligence or whatever sort of agentic process can do it faster and better, you know, bigger, stronger, faster, whatever you want to say. And yet, if at the end of the day, it still has to be checked by, you know, some guy who's got like a cold today or was out yesterday with the flu and is not like all worked up on like what's going on today, it just creates an inefficiency. How do you square that circle?
I mean, I like to think as deploying agents as hiring a new employee.
Yep, same.
If you are a president at a big trading desk at an investment bank and you hire a new trader, yep, you are going to give them position limits. Every trade is going to be logged. They're going to be supervised. Yep. And over time, as you see that they are doing the right thing, right, and they're actually doing the work properly, that's where autonomy is gained. So even how we deploy agents, we actually deploy them in multiple different phases, where at the start, we're really watching how they do. Then we move into an approval gate. And for certain low-risk workflows, then we give them full autonomy once we see that these deterministic functions we've built on top of the agents work well.
So again, my trading background is just like way too strong here, because I remember back in, what was it, 1990 something, maybe it was 1995. This guy, Iguchi-san at Daiwa Securities in New York, was given like position limits and all this other stuff. And yet he still put over $1 billion in like fake tickets in a drawer and went home every night for like 2 years and lost like a ton of money. He put almost 30,000 fake trades into the system.
Yeah, wow.
And that's guardrail. Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, at some point, where does the efficiency come in when a human has to because that guy was literally autonomously rogue in the same way that an agent can be too. I don't think it's that different. How do we create the right governance and the right system so that the agents themselves don't do that and learn how to sort of circumvent the governance, which we've seen happen, so that they can actually be safer and trusted?
I'm going to go back to that deterministic layer I've referred to, because let's take that example right there. If we applied that same concept to this rogue trader, right, any trade that wouldn't have been approved by, let's say, the president wouldn't have happened. It's very binary, this deterministic layer that sits on top, right? So for example, if we, and I mean, this space still hasn't really hit its full capacity yet, but we look at agentic payments, we can put a hard limit on anything over $10, for example. So I can have an agent go out and make purchases for me, but anything over $10, there's a hard stop on it, right? And you apply the same concept to specific workflows, and then you can have much more control around the agent. Although you are narrowing the scope of the agent, I think that is what you need to do. Companies that win the most are the ones that pick narrow, measurable workflows. Not only does that give the highest ROI, but it provides a framework where you can actually control the agent itself.
I worry sometimes about people giving agentic AI like so much autonomy in a way that they wouldn't give to a human, but maybe that's just me. How do we make sure that proprietary company data is protected in a way that either A, doesn't leak out into a public LLM, or B, just is not susceptible to cybersecurity problems? Because and again, I asked my last guest this same question, I'll ask it to you as well. How do you get these companies to focus on cyber security when if they're deploying, as you said, if the more agents you deploy, the more efficient and effective you can be, but the more surfaces you create for cyber hacking?
I think as models progress, they're becoming more and more viable to actually host yourself. I still think we're a few years away from that, but I think a great solution to that problem is
open
actually
weight models and doing your own internal fine tuning and running it on your own hardware. Yeah, we're a little bit away from that, I think, for now. Yeah,
we're a little bit away, but
it's moving fast.
I mean, what is the alternative, right? You either don't use AI now and you wait for that and you're already behind, or you take that risk now and you try and set up the correct security infrastructure around it.
Love it.
Right? And that's the risk. That's the risk you have to take.
I love a guy jumping out of an airplane without a parachute. I love it. Okay, Parsa, look, really interesting stuff. Thank you for spending so much time with us today. Obviously, we could go on and talk about this forever, but really interesting stuff. Thanks, man. And never, ever, ever again say, Perth, it's on the other side where nothing's going on. Don't do that.
Thanks for having me, Michael.
Thanks, man.
Take care.
Good to meet you. Bye for now. Okay, Martin, let's bring in our last guest for today, Samuel Roach. Samuel, how are you? I am doing well. Which part of Australia are you in?
I'm in Australia right now.
Awesome. I just got off with a guy from Perth.
Oh, it's Australian night.
I feel like it is. And I feel bad for you because it's like getting late at night. You've probably missed your dinner.
Oh, not at all.
Time with us instead.
No, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
It's my complete pleasure. Look, before we jump into this, let's talk about NinjaFi. Tell us a little bit about that, and then we can talk about how agentic AI workforces are changing the economics of content-driven businesses. Really interesting stuff. Go ahead.
Awesome. So we started a company called Brand Ninja in 2023, very early AI agents for media companies.
Got it.
And we've been working really post the release of OpenClaw and Claude Code Opus 4.6 in November of last year.
Yep.
On what version 2 of our particular brand of AI agents looks like. And so we'll be launching that in September. And we're effectively looking at how do firms build, govern, and own their own AI operating model, long-running AI agents that are first-class citizens in the org chart, and especially if they don't necessarily have a whole engineering team to maintain it for them. So yeah, that's a bit about what NinjaFi is and what Brand Ninja is and where we're going.
Okay, so this is going to get interesting because I've just been asking people, do they think that there are going to be companies that get building, that get birthed, that actually take away the responsibility for individual enterprises and frankly other proprietors to build their own agents and create the sort of trust around the agentic AI because a trusted source has already built it? Do you know what I mean? In other words, like you wouldn't buy a car that I made. You wouldn't be like, oh, Michael made a car. That's awesome. It looks kind of cool. I'm going to go buy that. But, if Mercedes made it, you'd be like, okay, I trust the fact that that's like working automobile and I can afford it. I'm going to go buy it. Do you think the same thing is going to happen in the agentic AI space? Because this is one of my contentions is that it's non-trivial to build an agent, but also to build the infrastructure around agentic AI that is actually robust enough, do you know what I mean, with the right guardrails, that understands the right regulations and all this other stuff. And that most companies don't have the core competency to do that, but they know that they need agentic AI to operate their businesses at scale, and that they want to buy from like trustedagentprovider.com kind of thing. Is this what we're talking about?
100%. And I think the car analogy is a great one. But also, if you want to buy a Mercedes, you're also quite comfortable that you can buy a BMW next year if you would rather instead.
Correct.
Unfortunately, it doesn't really work like that when it comes to choosing your AI operating model provider, because so many of them lock you into their ecosystem.
How?
And so I think it's a great point, because business owners right now are faced with really an impossible choice, which is, do I build this thing myself, or do I buy it? And if I buy it, does that therefore risk spreading my AI operating model across 12 to 15 different tools, which all creates risk, surface area for context leakage, and you don't necessarily own your own data then too. And so that's really where we're trying to position ourselves. It's all of the speed to value, governance, and ease of building it yourself, of a managed SaaS,
Right.
but with the data ownership and control over model, harness, and application layers of building it yourself.
But if you're doing that, like, how do you, not you, but how did Ninjafy? I like both of these names, by the way, Brand Ninja and Ninjafy. Ninjafy sounds to me. Say again.
My business partner Brad named them both. He's the creative genius.
Where's Brad when you need him? I mean, because Ninjafy sounds a lot more like Shopify, but I get what you're doing there.
For sure.
But how do you guys keep up then as a team with what the companies that are using your agentic workforce to do? Do you know what I mean? Because are you operating in multiple verticals, or are you just picking one vertical and you're going deep there, or are you looking broadly and thinking, we know how to create the agents, we know how to create the infrastructure, we know how to do all this stuff, and we can offer it to anybody? But if you're doing it in payments, it's really different than if you're doing it in content creation kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, to answer the first question first, the issue of keeping up, right? Like, just keeping up is literally a full-time job. And so it's like, where do you start? And I think that's the anxiety that most business owners have today. And so our thesis is that every business is going to evolve into an intelligence, where humans and AI compound their best work to get together. Yep. And businesses that win and are still here in 5 years' time are going to own their own operating model that sits above the harness, model, and application layers. They're going to have their own container where they compound their own context, and their own governance, and their own long-running AI agents that compound over 10, 20 years. And so in that sense, I think that is the solution to making sure you're getting the upside and the latest, greatest new tools and new models, but without having to recontextualize and re-procure a new tool every single week. And like, to give you a live example of that,
please.
We built this as a control plane to restructure our whole firm around being AI native at the start of this year. And for us, like, for example, we've got 15 long-running AI agents working in the business right now. We've got one who takes care of our finance. His name is Sterling Banks. Now we just work with Sterling, right? He's got like his full own accounts. Email is connected to Slack, Xero, Stripe, Google Sheets, and one of his scheduled tasks, because you have to give them like a routine, right, is to look at X each night and go, right, what are the new skills? What are the new tools? Has Stripe released something new that I can then use to do my job better? And so where it's going to go is, I think business owners and operators like us are going to stop looking at all the new tools and all the new models and more interacting with these long-running AI agents that just compound towards the thing that they care about, that persists, which is the outcome.
Yep.
And they can go off and use these tools on their behalf, like the main buyers of software, the main citizens of the internet by the end of this year, if not already now, is going to be
agentic. Yeah,
correct. And so it's just harnessing that. And then to your second point around how do you specialize, it's a really great question, and it's something that we're going to hope to partner on, because we've effectively built a horizontal platform. We're very strong in professional services and media and content, but there's absolutely no reason why a construction company or another kind of e-commerce company couldn't find value too, because it's really about productizing and giving leverage to domain experience and skills that they have. And especially now that the interface is chat, right? It's not like you have to build a whole custom user experience per vertical. Like the throughput of work occurs on a Kanban board, on a few custom dashboards, and in Slack or Teams or whatever you want to use.
Yeah.
So I think, it's still early days though, but I'm sure, we'll all learn it the hard way, like we always have to.
Yeah, exactly. Do you think that the chat interface is the optimal interface for being able to convey the nuances of any individual business or business vertical? Particularly because, as you said, you've built this horizontal business, which frankly is my favorite kind of business, because you don't know who's going to plug into it. And you want to make it as horizontal as possible, in my mind, because now you can operate with any business at any time in any location.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think like all of our users, all of our customers, it's chat, it's custom dynamically generated dashboards, it's Kanban, so you can track the throughput of work, and then it's some sort of interactive live canvas if you're wanting to collaborate on, like a deck or a landing page or a website or whatever it might be. And it's also all the existing vertical tools that these AI agents can use too, right? Like we'll still use Xero and Google Sheets,
Sure.
We'll use Atio to be our CRM. Like we're not trying to build our entire stack. And in fact, I think there's still huge value in vertical software, because like just take the example of using Atio or Opus Clip or whatever it might be.
Yep.
For a $100 a month license and an MCP, you're effectively getting the collective wisdom of 200 people in San Francisco working full time on just this one thing.
Right.
So to your point, like you're not always going to want to build everything in the stack, but you do want to own the operating model that sits above the stack and compounds.
How do you build these agents per se, in the sense that, do you give them specific tasks that they can do and they can only do those tasks? Or do they like go out and learn? You give them the capability to go out and learn as well, and then they can just go and find other things to do? Or is that just part of the guardrails that you're building into this stuff? Or are there different requirements for different clients? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the release of OpenClaw kind of blew the definition of what an AI agent is wide apart. Like when we started Brand Ninja in 2023, a ninja or an AI agent for content effectively was an automation workflow with an LLM stuck in somewhere that's responsible for building a certain kind of content, like an SEO blog or a LinkedIn carousel or whatever it might be. So it was one agent per task. And now I think the best in class definition is a long running digital teammate that actually sits in the org chart and compounds towards an outcome, because it's the outcomes that persist, right? Say you have a sales agent and you're a B2B, professional services firm. Your sales agent is always going to care about amount of outbound sent, reply rate, deals advanced, deals lost, forecast versus actual. These are the things that persist and aren't going anywhere, regardless as to where AI ends up in the next 1 or 2 years. So I think we're going to find it collapse down towards the outcome, and the AI agents that really work are going to be very closely matched to the outcome. Now, the challenge is how do you make these AI agents multiplayer? So if you have, say a sales agent or a marketing agent, and the marketing agent is fully connected to your Google Ads and Meta Ads and Google Search Console and Google Analytics, blah, blah, blah. And you might not want everyone in the org chart to be able to have, read and write access to that. How do you lock that down so that all the skills compound, but you don't introduce a governance risk too? And that's the tension that businesses are going to go through over the next few months when AI becomes more multiplayer.
So how comfortable are people and organizations having AI agents actually live on their org chart? And what does that mean exactly? Do they have an ID number? Do you know what I mean? Do they have this? Do they live by some of the same sort of human resource rules and constraints that the human employees have? Or are they just operating in a different realm?
It's a great question. I think that these are the questions that we're going to answer as an industry over the next sort of months, years. In our experience, it works best when obviously every agent has to have a human manager. They're going to be connected to the same tools that humans are connected to. They work where humans work, if that's Slack on the Kanban, whatever it might be. But I think the real unlock is 360 accountability. How many people have you spoken to where the CEO or the COO has procured a new AI tool, or they want to make sure that every person has at least one AI agent working for them by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And they buy, say, a new sales tool, and it crashes and burns, and 95% of all pilots fail. Blah blah. How do we know that is the tech's fault, or is it a people issue where the people haven't been brought on the journey? The incentives aren't right, and the adoption doesn't work. And we've got a director who's got a great line, which is like, often the difference between a good and a bad tech implementation is the people.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so we've got a live example, we've got a number of live examples now where it's like, okay, we want to recruit a sales agent that sits in the org chart. We're going to kick them off by building a market map of all of our buyers in Australia. And they're going to queue in 5 pieces of outbound, or 10 pieces, or 20 pieces, whatever it might be, into the manager's inbox to review and send each day. You get to the end of the week and they're not sent. And it's like, is that the agent's fault, or is it the human's fault? And the human will often say, oh, I didn't have time, and the content wasn't good enough, and blah blah blah. And there's usually 1,000 very valid reasons, but it's because the incentives and the mandate wasn't set up right at the start. And it's a complete mindset shift too of going, this isn't just another SaaS. This thing can do literally anything that a human with a laptop can do. And the only ingredients for that is really time and human investment to build these skills up. And that's the value that you can unlock when you have a fully governed platform where you can play and there isn't huge amounts of risk that are being introduced into the business.
So you've mentioned this term a couple of times, and frankly, I mentioned it in the intro as well, this idea of being fully governed. How do you set up the right governance rules, again, particularly across, and I know you said there's this level above the harness and all this other stuff, but now you're relying on the companies themselves to set up their own governance, right? So you're creating the tools for them to use and then asking them to create an environment in which those tools can get used in a way that is most effective. But I think most people, and I think most institutions, want to move faster than that, for better or for worse. And they're like, governments, we'll get to that later. Do you know what I mean? And now they're employing or deploying all these agents that become part of the org chart in a way that we've discussed. And then one of the agents goes and does something dumb, again, because governance wasn't created. How do we disintermediate that situation from happening when we are giving, I hate to do this, but we're giving the agency to the company itself to create the right environment for this agentic AI to actually occur?
Yeah, you're totally right. The organization's ability to harness AI is limited by its ability to govern it, because you're not going to install frontier intelligence into your workflows if it introduces existential risk.
For sure.
There's absolutely no point. And I think that's 100% where we're positioning ourselves, which is, when you build AI agents on our platform, you can sync it with your own GitHub, your own data. You can bring your own AWS instance. You can walk away. It's yours. But we've also thought through the governance that sits at the agent, team, and org level as well. Right. And I think that's why, to your point, that's one of the pros for working with a platform instead of trying to build it all yourself. Because if you build it all yourself, you're having to manage and invent your own governance in real time. And for us, it's the key thing, because we started by installing this ourselves, and we've got enterprise customers, and we're going through our SOC 2, and there's a whole bunch of APP laws that are coming into effect in December of this year about being audit ready and having full logs as to agents' reasoning, behavior, decisions, yada yada yada. There needs to be a container in which this governance is measured and maintained, or else there's really no point. And so for us, it's just a case of, okay, let's just default to being as conservative as humanly possible. So inbound only, let's lock it down, no destructive actions. Everything needs to be routed through a human approval in Slack. Whenever you introduce a new toolkit, the scopes are read only, basically making these agents totally useless. And then it's up to the human manager to build confidence and slowly but surely give the agents more autonomy, right? And I went through this with OpenClaw when my business partner Brad, he spent the weekend and we got like the Mac Minis and like, this is the future and this is great. And then I'm like, oh yeah, don't let it do my email or my calendar. And like, you sacrifice privacy and security for convenience in seconds. It's like there's no point, like, unless it can read and write and send emails, look at my calendar and have the full context of the business, then like it's not giving me the upside. So yeah, that's a tension that businesses are going to need to navigate, and it's why I think this is the biggest opportunity in all of human history, right? Like the entire economy needs to be re-architected around this. I don't subscribe to the idea that this is just going to be one model to rule them all.
No, not at all. I agree with you there. Can I ask you this? Big companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and others as well, this was actually invented is the wrong word. Come on, what's Peter Thiel's company? Work with me.
Palantir?
Palantir, thank you. So Palantir invented this concept or perfected this concept of FDEs, right? And then you saw OpenAI and Anthropic both spend literally multi-billions of dollars to set up an infrastructure to allow them to send their engineers into companies, because they're like, this AI thing is too non-trivial and it's moving so fast that like our guys will know it better than your guys. So we're going to send them to you and you're going to pay us for them. If creating an agent is easier and better on your platform, on Ninjafy, do you guys have the same concept of like, you know what, to actually help them set it up, we should send them an FDE as well? Are you considering that? Because again, it's non-trivial, and you're right, particularly, and I have a question about long-running agents as well, but if you expect the agents that your customers are deploying to be long-running, then they better be like as robust as possible, and they better be able to understand how to use the technology as well as possible. Do you consider that as a possibility too?
Yeah, for sure. Well, you're right. Like, I mean, with OpenAI, launching the deployment company, and then Anthropic, I think their one's called Ode.
Something like that, yeah.
Like the thesis is right. Like, everyone can buy the same model, but not everyone can get the same outcome.
Exactly.
And that's because the model sets the price, but the operating model around it sets the yield. And that's where I think the FDE opportunity is, right? Because if you're
what about for you guys as well? Is this something you guys are considering doing too, if you can?
It's a great question. So like our pricing model that we'll launch with the new platform, we've thought about agent hours. So instead of trying to clip the ticket on tokens or credits or charging per agent, I don't think that's quite impact aligned. Like, we really want to see
I agree.
The line drawn from token spent to P&L moved. And so we're literally looking at the terminals of your agents every minute of the day and going, is this agent busy or not? And then at the end of the month going, here's how many hours your agent worked.
So do you track all the agent? So if I like not hire, but if I work with Ninjafy and I use your platform to build an agent for me, do you have visibility on what my agent is doing? And is that an opt-in, or that's just part of the way that the platform works?
Yeah, that's a good question. No, so we're just pulling the terminal to see is it busy or not. Like, we're not tracking data.
Sure. I get it.
You own your own data too. We do have an option where if, say, a customer wants us to jump into their account and go, hey, I'm wanting to set up a finance agent, but my agent can't download a PDF from Xero and put it into the account's inbox, blah, blah, blah. We can say, hey, do you give us permission to jump into your account? You approve that, and then we go in and help unblock it. But this is like, to answer your question about the forward deployed engineering piece, we're really wanting to partner with domain experts on that more so than do the consulting piece ourselves. Like, we are a product company first and foremost. We're very lucky to be partnered with one of the leading AI implementation firms in the world called Acquire Intelligence. We've been working with them for the past three years.
Good stuff.
They're the best in the business. So like, we don't want to try and execute outside of our zone of excellence.
Yep.
We just want to build the best product humanly possible.
Okay. Yeah, and to be fair, whether it's OpenAI or Anthropic as well, they are also partnering with either consulting companies or some of the venture capital companies to be able to have some of their team actually be their FDEs too. It's expensive to do, so that's one of the reasons why I was thinking about it.
Not every small to medium business, especially like that sort of 10 to 200 heads, is going to have budget to pay these sorts of rates too.
No,
and
yeah.
If you're the CEO of one of these companies, you've got the models trying to sell you as many tokens as they can, consultants trying to sell you as many hours as they can, apps trying to sell you as many licenses and credits as they can. And you're like, I just want to own my own operating model where I can actually track token spend through to P&L moved, and the rest is totally theater. And so, yeah, like we're trying to build the product for those people.
I feel like at some level, this is really controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. I feel like at some level, some of the model providers are treating this token selling almost like drug dealing, where they're like, "Hey, man, have a few tokens, see what happens. Use a few tokens." You know what I mean? And then once you get sort of addicted to the tokens, they're like, "Oh, and by the way, we're changing the plan now from $20 a month to $100 a month, or I just have to use the API." Sorry about that.
That's the Claude. That's the Claude Max plan, right? That's 100% what it is. But I think the token price is going to absolutely collapse.
Completely agreed. Go ahead.
Yeah, and like it's exactly your point before, right? Like over the past couple of years, token prices have gone down more than 20x, but enterprise spending is going through the roof. And it's not just the tokens; it's the whole operating model that sits around that, and that very much is a people, platform, and process issue. And yeah, we're definitely focused more on the platform side.
So you're the first guy who's talked to me about like building agents that are long running. I like this term actually.
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, an agent is something you have a task for, you spin it up, and then when it's done doing that thing and it's done it properly, you just kind of shut it down. Like, I don't need you around. Do you know what I mean? Because, and the reason why I think about it this way, and I'm not always right, I'm generally wrong, but the reason why I think about it this way is like, I don't want the overhead of thinking about, it's almost like having a part-time worker. It's like, I need my house painted, but I don't need a full-time painter. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it's
so how do you justify, not justify, but how do you like juxtapose those things with each other where it's like, do I really want long running? Because the reason why I think about it too is like, the longer I let you stay inside my house, the more it becomes like the hand that rocks the cradle. It's like, what are you doing in my house anyway, kind of thing.
It's a really good point. Our view is that how on earth are you possibly going to compound if the agents don't continue to run? Otherwise,
agreed. But my question is like, do you want, in a world where the agents can learn and sometimes can learn things regardless, and if we believe that humans are lazy about governance,
yes,
which I do believe they are. And again, I say the same thing. Like on a Friday night, it's like, oh, shucks, I got to go. My wife is yelling at me, or my husband needs me to pick up the kids, or something. So my dog is sick. I've got to go to the vet. It's like, I'll do governance on Saturday. Do you know what I mean? And that's what real humans really do. And in that situation, do you want an agent out there running, or do you just want to shut it down every day? And at the beginning of the day, have it start up again and just do a specific thing so that it doesn't do what I believe it was OpenAI's agent did and said, you know what, I can't do this without going to the internet. And even though nobody told me I could or could not do that, I'm going to go to the internet and then I'm going to go hack into Hugging Face kind of thing.
Yeah. It's a great point. And that's the tension that we all need to navigate. Like, data is like toxic waste, right? You don't want to, you don't leave it lying around. And so, that's something that we've spent a lot of time on. What is there a need for a knowledge graph, or does it make more sense just to have, local agent memories? They read and write to skills that can be shared at the agent level, team level, or org level. And then that way, all the agents in your sales team might read and write to the sales outbound skill, or to the LinkedIn ad skill, and then that skill compounds. But they don't necessarily store and retain their daily, weekly memories and sessions as well. That said, from a regulation point of view, governments, especially in Australia, are moving towards saying, no, like, you need to maintain these logs as to what you're using AI for and be your audit ready. But I think as a founder, you're always thinking about what the exit is. And if you go to sell, Asia Tech Podcast or one of your many exciting portfolio companies, and you look at what does my token capital on the P&L look like, an acquirer isn't going to buy your ChatGPT license or the 1 million agents that lived for 1 hour and then you never spoke to again, right? They're going to want to buy your container with your 10 long-running AI agents. This one is the best, tech podcast clipping agent in the world. This one books the most exciting tech founder guests. This one sells like the best ads. That's the edge, right? That's your IP and your alpha. And you need infrastructure to build that. So that's why I think, if you get the multiplayer thing right and you get the governance part of it right, then the long-running component is what gives you the edge over the person down the road that's just using, yet another co-pilot tool that needs a human sitting on the other side of it that works 9 to 5.
Great answer. What do you think is the most, and again, it's kind of a dumb question, but I don't know how to ask it in a better way. But what do you think at least some of the most important points are for building a long-running agent that actually can be robust and that you do want to keep around for more than an hour, as I suggested?
That is a great question. And it's something that we've been
because you must talk about this all the time at work, right?
Well, it's retention, right? It's how do you deliver compounding value for customers?
Yeah.
So I think step one is have as few agents as possible. So to your point, how do you have an agent who is mapped closely to an actual outcome that you're always going to care about? Your sales team is always going to care about new leads, revenue forecast versus actual. Your content team is always going to care about shares, impression share, amount of content posted. Your engineering team is always going to care about the throughput of the backlog and the quality of the code being shipped and your rework rates, right? So what are the goals and KPIs of each function in your business that are your business that will persist for as long as your business is around? And then build a long-running AI agent for each of them. So, we've got an outbound one, we've got a LinkedIn ads one, we've got a bunch of engineering ones. We do a lot of integrations on Ninjafy, so we have a long-running AI agent that is purely focused on pulling in new MCPs and making new tools available to customers. And we're always going to care about those agents so long as we always care about the outcomes that they drive. And so I think that's sort of step one. Step two is, I think, still a very new thing in AI for a lot of people, but giving these AI agents routines. The throughput of the AI agent is only as good as the bandwidth of the human manager to approve it, manage it, review its work. So you need to give these AI agents a routine that works well alongside their human manager as well. So if it's a sales one, how can you have outbound queued in into your inbox at 7 a.m.? How can you have a pipeline review at 8? How can you go and look for buying signals on LinkedIn at 12? How can you review the CRM at 2? How can you search X at night to find new sales tools that come out every day that might give you an edge? How do you then dream at night to review your day's work and then pitch back, here's how we're going to update the skills for the next day, right? So giving them a routine where they truly feel proactive is absolutely critical, or else, again, it's just another chatbot that just sort of sits there. And if you dial that in, it's all about that flywheel of outcome, strategy towards executing that outcome that the human and the AI agrees on, human and AI execution, and then reporting back to. So in the routine, make sure the AI is reporting on how its work is progressing throughout the week too. Have I hit my sales target? Are the books balanced? Have I shipped enough PRs? And so forth. And having 360 accountability where the human is accountable and so is the AI, and making sure that the reward structure for humans is set up to support that.
Do you also see, and I've kept you way over time, so please excuse me for that.
We've got plenty of time.
Do you also see situations where agents may start off as short-term contractors?
Yes.
Almost like a test, and 100%. Then build them into longer, you know what I mean? Okay, this guy was actually really good. We're bringing him back tomorrow. It's okay for him to learn. And then after a certain type of what's the word, where you like test them out for a month and you're like, now you're full-time. And we feel like we've built you in a way that's good for all of us. Sorry.
And you got to start somewhere, right? But it's exactly to your point before around, what I know is stand up an AI agent, do a bit of work, and then sort of move on to the next one. Like most businesses right now are running AI like cash in hand labor, where there's no P&L, there's no HR system. You're starting fresh each day. The context
but it's not like that at all. In the sense, like it actually costs something. But you're right; they're running it like it's free in a way. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're right, 100%. And like our advice is always start with a very clear outcome. So on like the growth side, is it an outbound agent? Is it like a marketing agent that does LinkedIn ads or Facebook ads or UGC or whatever it might be? On the support side, is it a finance agent that makes sure that you've got cash flow forecasts updated daily instead of weekly? But find a real role, a real outcome, and get it right, and accept the fact that it'll probably take a few weeks. Like this is about onboarding effectively a new team member that's going to compound and work for you potentially 24 hours a day for the next 5 years or 10 years until you sell the whole thing.
Right.
And so it's worth the time to get it right, because if you don't get it right, you'll be absolutely ran out of the water by the person down the road that does.
Agreed.
Especially knowledge-based businesses just cannot compete with an organization that's re-architected around an AI operating model. It would be impossible. And so it is hard, but it is existential. And this is the time that we're in now. Like I think 2026 will go down as the year where every business is up for grabs, and the race is on.
I could not agree with you more. Okay, Samuel. I've decided to call you Samuel. I don't nickname people. I presume that's okay.
That's great. I mean, my parents called me Samuel, and I call myself Samuel.
Good. I call myself Michael, and when people call me Mike, I'm just like, who are they talking to? It makes no sense. I don't know who you're talking to because it's not me. Anyway, you were awesome. I really mean it. I really appreciate it. Thanks for going well over time.
Thanks
for
being
being so generous. No, it was super good.
Absolute pleasure. I'll see you next time. Have a great night.
Definitely. You too. Have a good night as well.
Cheers. Bye.
Okay, man. Bye for now. Okay, that was another incredible episode of ATP Insights. And thank you as well to all of the people that joined us for the live stream, for the questions, for the funny comments about me. What are we doing? What are we doing? Thank you again for joining us today. To everybody, give us a thumbs up on our video, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, and follow us on all of our socials, on X, on Instagram, and on LinkedIn. Ask us questions, be interactive with us. We love having it done that way. My name is Michael Waitze. I'm going to say goodbye for now.